Good evening, and welcome to our March 3rd, 2020 Board of School Trustees meeting. May we please face the flag and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Trustee King.
We're here.
Trustee Zuno.
Present.
Trustee Candelaria.
Present.
Trustee Miller.
Present.
And Trustee Mamala is also present. Let the record reflect that all 5 trustees are present and the superintendent of schools. Item 2, special recognition presentation.
Trustees, our first presentation tonight is courtesy of the Clark High School Art Club. I have Mr. Verda come on up and explain, but essentially I had talked to Mrs. Dato and Mr. Verda about wanting to have some artwork from the students to display in my office, and they took that idea and ran with it, and that's what we have in front of us, and we're going to unveil it tonight.
Good evening, President Mamala, members of the board, Superintendent Miller. It's an honor to call up Mrs. Cochran and Mr. Peck, 2 art teachers at Clark High School, 2 very caring individuals that always go above and beyond for our students, and it's truly an honor to be their leader. So I'd like to call them up so they can explain the artwork here.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Cochran, and this is Mr. Peck. Our art club is very small but mighty. We have, and you guys could come up here, we have Jacob Glass, Greg Ramos, Mariana Martinez, and Isabella Reyna. And they worked on this mural for about a semester, probably once a week for an hour a week. They really pumped it out, and we selected the quote and ran it by Mr. Miller, and he approved. And then we started on the mural, and we just kept going. And they're always there every week, and they do a really good job. So, yeah.
All right, so
Have any questions?
yeah, let me go down there and we'll unveil it.
Okay, sounds good. Gotta get a picture of it.
I have not seen it yet, so.
Oh my. All righty. There. Everybody see it?
Yeah, we better go look at it.
It's nice, though. I liked your quote.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. That is really impressive, and I love it, and can't wait to get it hung up. Thank you so much, really and truly. Humbled by your work. Our next item is the new high school for Hammond project status report. Is it Scott or David who's coming up tonight? David Yancey and Scott Cherry from Skillman Corporation.
Go ahead, David. We'll let you start with that.
No problem. Good evening, school board members and Superintendent Miller. Here to give you your monthly update.
So far away.
Like usual, we have our table of contents. We have our progress key plan, narrative update, progress photos, next 4 weeks, milestone, on-site diversity and budget update. Here's your progress key plan facing Calumet Avenue. Just want to point out that we'll be starting here this week on the brick veneer on this north side academic wing. And also in 2 weeks, we'll be dewatering and digging out the pool for Unit J. Work completed since last board meeting. Installed metal panels for the south academic wing, the exterior metal panels. Placed curtain wall frames and glazing for the pool and flex gymnasium. Erected stairwell and elevator shaft for the north academic wing. Masonry at the north academic wing corridors. We poured our final slab on grade for the main gymnasium and for the black box. Interiors, we taped and drywalled the administration area, Unit C. Installed soffits in the main gym. Erected masonry alcoves for the north academic wing, Units A and B. Finished fire protection on Units D and E, the south academic wing. Painted primer for the music and band area. Installed metal studs for the north academic wing, first and second floor, Units A and B. And drywall soffits for the cafeteria. Here are your progress photos. Right here is the entrance of the black box. It gives you the grand Broadway entrance feeling once you step into it with a big brick veneer. Here's the interior black box view. You will have bleachers on this side, this east side, this north side, and also not pictured on the west side. Above is your audio-visual control center. And it'll be looking down on the main stage right here, and on this south side is your stagecraft area. Here is your main gymnasium, which we poured the final slab on grade. You'll have your bleachers here on the west side and on the east side. You'll have a balcony overlooking the main gym. Behind this wall is 4 locker rooms and bathrooms. And behind this wall is the wrestling room, and on the north side of it is your fitness room. Here's a picture of your fitness room. You have 3 huge windows to get daylight in for all your athletes that are working out in that time period. And also not picture is going to be windows, and it's overlooking the pool, so you can actually look into the pool from the fitness room. Here's your typical view of classroom. This is in the south academic wing. You have your unit ventilators here. We're going to be starting painting. Each classroom pretty much has a window, and we painted primer. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to be installing metal panels for the north academic wing, erect metal stairs for the north academic wing, small stairs for the control room and the black box, brick veneer in the corridors of the black box in the pool. We're going to mount roof ladders. And for interiors, we're going to tape and drywall the administration area, paint the black box, begin excavation for the pool, pour concrete for the pool walls and floor, paint in the cafeteria, and interior metal stud framing in the north academic wing, 3rd floor. Here is the milestone dates as usual. We have finished structural steel, a permanent power. We pushed out the bid date for the bid package number 3 for some tentatively for waiting for some decisions to be made. And March of 2021 is when we will begin demolition of the existing building. For your average monthly diversity report, on site we have 31% participation minorities on the job, and we have 16% Hammond residents on the job. We have more in depth. There are 103 people per day on site, 6 African American per day, 26 Hispanic, 72 white. We have 3 women on the job per day, and 16 people from Hammond. And Scott is here to give us, as usual, the budget update.
Before I go to that, do you have any questions regarding the schedule? things looking well on site. From the financial side, we're very pleased with where we're at. One of the lines that we always go to and look at is down at the bottom, the contingency, line 223. You can see that the contingency is holding well. What has happened over the last, I just got word on, was the $340,000 that you see there pending. That's really $40,000 now, because we were always allocating $300,000 to compensate for the wall that collapsed. However, the insurance company paid all of that, and it's all gone away. So that's good news. That means that $300,000 more will go into the contingency. So at this stage of the project, when you look at where we are from a contingency standpoint and the amount of work that we're complete, we're in very good shape. We literally have not used any of it. In fact, it's increased since we started. So we still continue to take a conservative approach with the 2 bid packages that'll be coming up, the athletic site, with the available funds there that may give you some opportunity to do some additional amenities in the site. And David mentioned the building demolition. I think you said the building demolition will start in March, but we'll be bidding it in March. So, and then demolition obviously will occur in that summer. So on the financial side, all good news, we think, with the way the project's progressing. When you move over to the district-wide, we recently had a package go out. As we mentioned before, the district-wide work is going to be done in phases. We're in what we call phase 2 right now, and that amount ranged anywhere from the document I have here shows 5.6 to 7 or 8 million. We were looking at that amount for this district, or the district-wide for this phase, and the bids came in. We're vetting those bids, and that work should be taking place this summer. So whatever we use there, we'll push it down to the next phase or continue to look at other opportunities, do other things as we use that money. We'll see where things come out and ultimately end up with a phase 3.
Your voice is dropping, sir.
I'm sorry. So district-wide, we're in good shape, and we're going to be starting that program construction here this summer. So that's the financial update. Any questions?
So you're stating on the report then that next time we come and look at the report, your contingency is going to be just under 2.7 million, am I correct?
It'll actually be just over 3 million.
Okay.
Because the 300,000 was a placeholder, and we're not going to need it.
Right.
And that would indicate that there's about $40,000 pending. And those are things that you encounter during the construction. And for this size of project, $40,000 at this stage is not a lot.
Thank you.
Trustee Mamalo.
Trustee King.
Mr. Well, my question, I guess I directed to Mr. Miller. You had sent an email indicating that we were going to discuss the solar situation. At what point?
I have a meeting with Schmidt set up for April 7th, and then after that, they should be prepared to present to the public on the second board meeting in April.
And again, my question again is, which bid package will that be taken out of in terms of the cost?
As far as financing that would probably be in the either in the second bid package or the third bid package, the athletic and amenities area, or you could also use the available contingencies if you so desire.
Excuse me. And you indicated approximately how much had we set aside for that, or will we discuss that on April 7th?
We haven't really discussed that at this stage. The April meeting will kind of be a fact-finding and have all the information in front of us, and then that's when some of the budgets could be established and how we want to proceed.
And regarding the industrial cleaning, when are those bids going out? You know, there was a lot of activity regarding
You're talking about the cleaning of the site?
Yes, sir.
There's a couple buckets of cleaning. There's, the daily cleaning and some of the site cleaning, and then there's final cleaning. The bulk of the work for cleaning will be the final cleaning portion. So as the areas become available and latter at the end of the project is when we normally do the final cleaning. You don't want to do it too early, obviously, because there's still dust generated and things like that. But we are looking at packages to try and do some other cleaning and work with either contractors or some of the unions to create a package for routine cleaning that we may need through the summer as work picks up on the inside.
And we are continuing doing our outreach in terms of local, and what are we doing exactly? What have we done recently or in the last couple of weeks or month or whatever?
For the maintenance projects, I can tell you now that we have great Hammond participation. A lot of local firms are going to be working on that site. But we'll definitely have more information for you on the 17th. For the Hammond High School, we're continuously having the primes go out to the trades and get minority participation to work on our sites as well. That percentage has been continually increasing or been steadfast.
And local as well. Remember, it's the three parts: local, female, and minority. So
Yes,
how are
ma'am.
we doing locally in terms of the bids?
Like I said, we're still vetting out information. We'll have that in greater detail on the 17th, but there is a lot of Hammond participation. There are 2 roofers from Hammond that are prime contractors for the maintenance project. So again, we're still vetting out that information. I want to give you a 100% confirmed answer on the 17th.
On the 17th. And one final question, Mr. Miller, I've been really concerned about this $2.5 million that's been set aside for furniture. Isn't there a pot of money that's been set aside for additional funding that we might need in this budget? Didn't we put it in a savings account or some kind of bond or something?
So yes, when we received the money, it was invested. That money is currently allocated for the all-district projects, not for the high school. It's set aside for the all-district projects.
So if we fall short, where do we go?
The $3 million contingency is.
Well, that's what I was, okay.
Yes, we do have the contingency. Yeah.
So we possibly will be looking at additional, and for the solar as well, because I'm not a happy camper about this solar. We were told one thing, and now we're hearing something entirely different a year or so later. So hopefully on the 17th, it'll be better news than what we've heard so far. Thank you. And one other thing, Mr. Muller, we certainly can contact NIPSCO and get a projection of what our utilities will cost. And I think that would be a good idea to, because I can't imagine how expensive that's going to be, $2 million, and so we need a projection and where would those funds come from. And because, after all, that's why we talked about solar, energy conservation. Here we're building a $110 million school, and, going into a global economy, and then we're not even considering, energy conservation utility. We need to get as much NIPSCO off that grid as possible. The more off the grid, the more savings we'll get. And I can't imagine what it's going to cost us to heat up that building. So could we get a projection? They do. I know they offer commercial buildings and residential, that kind of service.
James, is that something that you're familiar with?
I was just going to ask him.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Part of Schmidt's project engineering, they have an energy consultant. Actually, they have in-house energy modeling. And so they know approximately what it's going to cost for that building, and all they have to do is plug in our rates. So we only need the NIPSCO rates. We don't really need a service from NIPSCO. So yes,
can you
we
have
can
them run
provide
that?
that.
And thank you.
Yes,
So we can get those projections.
that's correct.
Okay, fine. And the maintenance package, I had mentioned that before. I want you all to keep that on your radar. We're going to need a maintenance package once this building is completed. So when things go, south, we'll, we'll know what to do, that you guys won't forget us in the long run. So on the 17th, could you talk about a maintenance package as well, sir?
Are you
maintenance
asking like when things inevitably there's an issue, like who is going to service that? Is that what you're like, the HVAC?
Yes, who's
and all
going to
that?
service this high-tech, furnace and water heater and all that? Who's going to service that? And
Well, wouldn't our
things-
custodial staff be servicing the building and be trained?
That's
as
typically
they
what
always have?
happens. And a lot of times, the staff, the custodial staff and the maintenance staff gets engaged in the project as we're building it. They get familiar with the equipment that's being installed. And we have training sessions that are part of the contract for those that will be taking care of this building, temperature control and things like that. There'll be either factory training or here. And once complete, a lot of the equipment has, some equipment may have 5-year warranties, some may have 10, some may have 1-year implied warranties. After 12 months, about 10 months after this project is 100% complete, our team will come back and we will document any warranty issues that come up and make a list of those.
Is that in the
Because-
contract?
Yeah, that's part of what we do, and the reason you do that is because your bonding capacity or your bonding power usually lasts about a year after the project is complete. So if you document things in 10 months, and contractors do not, give us some trouble trying to get them fixed, which is rare, we can go to the bonding company. And we're always here. That's one of the things we've said. We're based here in Northwest Indiana. We live in these communities, so we're not going anywhere. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
I would like to add to that. Our maintenance staff are comprised of shops. We have an electrical shop, a plumbing shop, HVAC shop. All of them are staffed by highly qualified, skilled tradesmen. They're actually signatory to the local unions, to all of the trade unions. So we have a number of people that are extremely skilled, and they will continue to get training on any of the new high-tech equipment. So I know that that's come up before, and I haven't had an opportunity to address it, but we have some very skilled folks. The custodial staff, of course, there are eyes and ears in the building. They do primarily all of the cleaning. That's the most important day-to-day operation in the facility. And then when I say eyes and ears, they will make certain that they submit work orders on things that require the skilled craftsman. Okay?
Because that was with any type of new construction that we've had with the elementaries. The custodial staff was trained and,
Yes.
and they've done a very, very good job through the years.
Yep.
We have a great custodial staff.
Yes. Yeah, the custodial staff and the maintenance staff work hand to hand.
Maintenance,
hand
yes.
in hand. Yep. All right. Thank you.
And so we don't need to call out anybody else from the outside or, we don't need to do that.
Anything else for Skillman?
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Okay, our next item is updates on our comprehensive and targeted school improvement from the building principals. I have some of them coming up first because they have sectional games at their schools. So the first person to come up is actually Mr. Preboy, our special ed director. He's going to lay some groundwork for our targeted school improvement.
Good evening, Board. Hi, I'm Robert Preboy. I'm the Director of Special Education for School City of Hammond. And what I want to do is kind of give you an overview of, a brief overview of special education, but specifically to TSI. Oh, it's right here. Okay, got it. Perfect. Okay, so you have federal legislation, okay? And that's what, you have two groups of federal legislation. The first group was No Child Left Behind, okay? And No Child Left Behind was organized school improvement by organized school improvement by isolating subgroups of students and then trying to put in interventions in place to improve it. In No Child Left Behind, you had subgroups. You had something called AYP, and then under AYP in No Child Left Behind, you had response to intervention. So that's where that language kind of comes from. And the idea was that you identified groups of kids who were struggling, and then you created intervention programs to build their reading and math skills. So that's kind of where RTI comes from. And then, but now No Child Left Behind is gone, and now we have ESSA, okay? So with ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Acts, they're very similar. You still have subgroups. You identify subgroups of people. And instead of adequate yearly progress, you have something called TSI, Targeted Support and Improvement. So the concept is that there's a group of students or a subgroup in your building that needs more support, and then you have to put a plan in place to increase their growth academically. So the difference between No Child Left Behind and Every Student Succeeds Act is that in response to intervention, it was very much about pulling groups out and making separate categories of students and then trying to do interventions that way. With MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, it's much more about everybody, all, okay? And that's a huge philosophical shift between the two systems. So, so that's the big picture. And then you have the Indiana State Performance Plan, which is we call that the SPP. And what that means is the state has to submit a plan how they're going to enact ESSA, okay? How are they going to enact ESSA? What is the state's plan how they're going to enact it? And so they came up with something called results-driven accountability. And results-driven accountability is the mechanism to improve special education, okay? So for how it works is they look at School City of Hammond and they put all their special education departments in a category. And Hammond is put in the category with 23 different LEAs. And those LEAs, those districts, basically have 10,000 students or more. Okay? So when we're being compared, when our score is being compared, that's who we're being compared to as a special education department. And in that sense, so RDA is new. So when it first came out in 2018, they gave us a score of 51. And what they do, if you look up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see they look at results, which is test scores, and which is I learn, I read, things like that. Compliance, which is your how you're doing on your federal indicators for policies and procedures, your federal laws, and then data, which is basically your timely reporting for your state reports that you have to turn in. So and those are all weighted, okay? And then they they give you an RDA determination score. So the first thing they did was we scored a 51, and we were in a group of tier 3, and basically it's all about improvement. So then we said, okay, we looked at the data, and then we decided to make some changes. And the changes we made to some of the structures and practices was we address third grade iRead. We changed the way we did the iStar assessment, which was for preschool, and we changed some of our LRE, which is least restrictive environment, which is a concept that states in order for a student to receive FAPE, they need to be in the right LRE. They need to be in the most least restrictive environment to receive FAPE. So we changed some of that, and
Can you explain FAPE real quick?
Oh yeah. So that's free public free public education, basically. So if I'm a general education student or student in special education, I could get my education in general education, but I might need some special education support. And so your least restrictive environment is the balance between the two. Is that clear? Okay. So we made some changes, and then we got our second score back, and we scored a 69. So we moved up. So that's good. So we used the mechanism to improve. But the interesting thing is we still need to get up to tier 1. Okay, but in order to get there, that's where TSI comes into play. okay? Because in order to really make that growth, we need to make some holistic changes, okay? So where RDA and TSI sort of share, they share something called that you have to have evidence-based practices, okay? So if you're doing something for students, it has to be evidence-based. And if you're going to do interventions, they have to be evidence-based. So as you're in education, you have to have a grounding in research. You have to understand research, and you have to understand what works and what doesn't, and you don't want to waste any time doing things that doesn't work. Or if you're looking at data, you want to make sure that your data is showing you the right thing to do. So there's a researcher, and his name is John Hattie, and he does something called meta-analysis, which is where he looks at multiple studies on a certain intervention, and then that intervention is given what's called an effect size, okay? An effect size of 0.40 will give you average growth. So as you're doing research and you're looking for interventions to do, you want to focus on interventions that have larger effect sizes, bigger than 40, okay? So as I went through some of the school improvement plans, I kind of identified some of the things that the principals were doing, and I kind of looked at how they were doing for research-based interventions. And from what I could tell from what I saw there is that many of the things we're doing do have a good effect size, so that's good. All right, so the next few slides are going to be a framework. Okay, so this framework here is provided by the IDOE, and it represents all the essential components needed to improve outcomes for all students. Okay, so what we would want to do is we would want our interventions that we're doing for TSI to align with what we're doing for RDA, to align with what you're doing with our school improvement plans. We want all that to align. And then on top of that, we want all of those interventions and structures and practices that the schools are doing to connect to this framework in the big picture. So this way, it's a better use of resources. Okay, so I'm going to go through this here. So I'll break down each one. So as we move forward, as you guys move forward with for TSI, you have 5 years to sort of improve. That's the timeline they give you, 5 years. So it's not change that's going to happen right away. You sort of have to have a vision, you have to have a mission, you have to stick with that. You might need to adjust it a little bit, but the idea is that you have to have a mission and a vision of where you want to go, and you have to kind of stick with that. And so I'm going to read this for the record out loud. So our goal as educators is to improve outcomes for all students. This can be accomplished through a system that ensures equity and access. Equitable access is the guarantee that all students are provided the necessary supplementary aids and services, accommodations and modifications to meaningfully participate in the general education curriculum. This must be accompanied by a school-wide belief in shared responsibility. Improving outcomes also requires a strong core curriculum, high-quality instruction, unbiased assessments that guides instruction, and collaboration among administrators and community. Multi-tiered systems of support and universal design to learning provide the foundation necessary to reach this overall goal. So my goal in special education is to serve all the students, and that's really what MTSS is really all about. It's about reaching all the students, because special education should never supplant general education, okay? General education's first, they're general education students first, then they get special education support. So with that, that's my sort of vision and mission of what we should be looking for. And the first thing, collaboration. So on the right here where it says school improvement plans, what I did is I looked at all of the school improvement plans that were aligned to TSI that the principals submitted, and I picked out the things that aligned with this framework. So PLCs, which is professional learning communities, was a common theme. General education and special ed teams, they collaborate by meeting weekly and monthly. We do staffings on student behavior. Teachers and principals do data meetings where they're looking at NWEA. In the special education department alone, we hold over 2,300 conferences a year with parents, case conferences, staffings, meetings like that. So that's a lot of collaboration. And then case managers for special education meet monthly with teachers. So that's good. Instruction, again, looking at the school improvement plans, I went through it, and the things I saw that aligned to this IDOA framework were repeated reading fluency training, Mind Play, which is also called MRVC, Ascend Math, Study Island, Exact Path, which are interventions that align to NWA, co-teaching, Khan Academy, which is used a lot in the high schools, IXL Math, Mathia, project-based learning, close reading, and metacognitive strategies. So those were the elements that I saw in the school improvement plans to address specifically students in special education. But more importantly, I'll get to that, and under assessment, in this category, when I looked at their improvement plans, I saw NWA groups for intervention, people using Exact Path and Study Island again, basic skills classes, which especially at Morton High School, they reorganized the way that was done, and formative assessments. Under curriculum, now this, to me, this area is the biggest, has the most potential for us in Hammond. So with the advent of the curriculum maps that are coming into fruition, and those are really developing. So the way forward is once you have curriculum maps developed, then you work with teachers to develop PLCs and formative assessments, and from there you work in an MTS structure. And in that process, you service not only students in special education, but you address all students. And that's really kind of the way forward for us. All right, so MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support. This is a concept that basically what it says is that you're going to put programs in place that service everybody. Because if you improve general education, you're going to also improve special education because it's going to align underneath. And it also fits back into the concept that special education was never meant to supplant general education. Okay, that's really an important concept. So as a school, under MTSS, you have teacher teams meeting to discuss student progress. We have something that we developed this year called the Academic Behavior Resource Room, which is basically a way that we restructured to deal with students who get suspensions. So in the past, how we done it is we had an in-school suspension room, and that was staffed by like maybe a paraeducator, and students went there. This year we changed it and we put a teacher in that spot. And so when you do that, students who get sent to an ISS for a behavior infraction, then they don't ever lose out on their education because they have access to a teacher, there's a para, and now that we're moving to be more one-on-one, they still have access to the curriculum. So in that way, when students get put in an ISS type setting, they still have access to their curriculum. That's really important because it's really about equity. That's what it's really about. Universal design to learning is basically differentiation. It's a big concept, but the best way to think about it is general education teachers have lots of different types of learners in the classroom. Everyone learns a little differently, and kids approach curriculum in a different way. They approach learning in different ways, and universal design to learning is the concept that you differentiate according to their needs, and you then have them, they could do different types of assessments. One of the things I find interesting as we kind of learn about project-based learning is universal design to instruction and universal design to learning fits very well with that. That's kind of a good concept because as you sort of explore and problem solve, you can come up with different ways to assess. Okay. And the big piece of it is shared responsibility. That's this part of the framework. And that's where I saw in the school improvement plans is that you have teacher teams collaborating. We have that 71.5. What that is 71.5% of our students receive special education services within the general education setting. So the state goal is 73. So we're really close to that, and for as big as we are, that's really good. It's a slow number to move, but we're so close to 73 as it is, I think that's excellent. But the idea is that you put interventions in general education, and that those interventions help all students. That's really where we should be moving. And again, it's about equity and access. That's the last piece of the framework. Because if you could help all students and improve systems for everyone, it's going to improve special education too. So in the final slide here, when I looked at the different schools, I broke it down to what they were doing in their school improvement plans. And all the structures and methods that they have listed here all have an effect size of higher than 40. So that's good. Some have even higher, but I just used 40 as the hinge point. So what that tells you in the big picture is everything that the schools have in their school improvement plans are evidence-based, and they have an effect size higher than 40. And so what that sort of tells you is you're kind of pointed in the right direction. And again, for TSI status, you have 5 years to move off of it. So it's the kind of thing that you need to sort of stay focused on, but it's really big picture. And so the goal would be that you improve systems for the whole school, for all the kids, and in that process, you're going to improve special education. So I think the principals are going to come up next and kind of talk more specifically about it. So thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Preboy before he?
Total now, how many special ed students do we currently have?
Around 2,000.
2,000. Okay.
All right, Mr. Easton, want to come up first?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, Superintendent Miller and board members. And thank you for letting me move up the ladder, because I'm going to get over here and support my governors in their sectional matchup with Maryville. So, this is our TSI update, and it's really going to tie in great with what Robert just shared with you, because we're seeing that evidence, and even, Mr. Miller, what I shared with you recently. Now we're going to have more data to support what I was telling you was going to happen, what I believed was happening. So we had 3 areas of focus for our TSI, which was academic rigor, character growth, and then special education. I've been asked to address what we are doing with the special education and what we're seeing result-wise. Our initial goal in special education was to create a pathway. Oh, and before I do that, I have to thank, I have Monica Stein, who is here with me tonight supporting me from the leadership team, Robert Preboy, who has helped us tremendously with what our initiatives were this year to make those happen, and Larry Fulrad, bearing with me with data. Every time I ask a stupid question, it helped a lot. Thank you, Larry Fulrad, wherever you are. So we wanted to create a pathway for special ed students to continue to receive those services, as Robert was talking about, by putting a licensed biz instructor in with our parapro that we have been using strategies for academic rigor and character growth within the special education environment, and he mentioned that curriculum being consistent with our special ed teachers. And our goal was to see a 25% decrease in special education student suspensions and lost instructional time due to removal from the classroom. And remember what Robert said, it's not just about special education students, it's about equity. And so that's going to bear some things out for us here. Update of the strategies to meet our goal. So some of the things did change along the way. We do have the licensed biz instructor. We are using those strategies for academic rigor in the special ed classrooms. We do have a school focus on emotional learning that has helped in this area as well as the other areas of our plan. We have started that consistent curriculum, which we're going to continue to refine. We also launched a program that we decided along the way that we needed to, called Operation Success, and that is a plan for students to have support, but to reflect on their grades, attendance, missing work, and give them a plan to attack that during school working with an adult. And then another big key to this is we are utilizing guidance in a different way. I have 3 brand new guidance counselors. I have a great team of guidance counselors, and they have really jumped in at 80% digging into working with their students one-on-one. So that's been a huge impact because they spend a lot of time with them. So the first chart I'm going to show you is the total number of special education infractions, and I'm using October through February, and the reason I'm doing that is because that's really when our plan, went into place. So that's when we could start to see the results, and I also gave us 5 years to look at. But basically, the total number of special education infractions, October through February, that resulted in a disciplinary action. And you can see that literally we dropped from 503 a year ago already to 201. That's a 60% reduction. The next one is in-school suspensions of special education students. And the same frame. You can see we dropped from 267 to 9. That's a 96% decrease. Regarding out-of-school suspensions, we dropped from 57 to 23, which is a 60% reduction. And then our total expulsions dropped by 75%. Okay, so that makes you want to look at the entire picture. So that was our special education population. Now when you look at the entire population with gen ed, special ed combined. Okay, so total number of infractions for the entire school dropped by 47%. That resulted in a disciplinary action. A drop here of ISS, in-school suspension, 88% across the entire school. Total number of OSS drops, 46%. And then the number of expulsions dropped by 83%. So clearly the framework has been impactful. The utilization of the teachers, every teacher has an Operation Success classroom, every guidance counselor working with their students, and lots of phone calls home. I also saw today in our data, because every day we're looking at data, that Operation Success, we are now seeing, we're addressing failure. We have a 6% decrease in the number of failures at this point in the last 6 weeks. So, finally, last slide, continued next steps. We're going to continue to do what we're doing because it's amazing, working fantastically, tracking those expectations, continuing to, for the biz instructor, also for student assignments in biz, also to monitor those basic skills curriculum that we've been working on in those classrooms, and then to continue tracking the Operation Success data. So that's it for me, and if you have any other questions for me.
Oh, whatever you're doing appears that it's working.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is. And a lot of that's because every time I had an idea or we talked about it, Robert Preboy didn't say no. He says, okay, let's see how we can do that. Let's see how we can make that. He can come over and look at facilities and worked with us. And the biggest thing is the grunt work that all the staff is doing and making the students responsible for their own data. You know, we keep working for them, strategy after strategy. Well, guys, it's time. You've just got to own your own data. So that's what we're doing this year. All right. Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, just to clarify for the audience for the presentations, all 4 of our high schools plus Scott and O'Bannon were cited for special education for targeted school improvement. So when the principals are coming up here and speaking, they are speaking specifically to addressing that identified gap for special education. We have 2 schools that were identified as comprehensive school improvement. That's Eggers and Wallace. I will save those 2 for the end because there will be they have multiple indicators that they need to address. But the high schools and O'Bannon and Scott are specifically just addressing special education population. Mr. Verda.
All right, good evening again. So for our TSI goal here, we have 70% of all high school students qualifying for special education service will be on track to graduate. The reason we picked 70%, obviously we wanted something that was realistic. Looking in the years past, the previous 2 years, only about 55% of our seniors were graduating on time that were in special education. So we knew that we had to improve there. So special education services at Clark Middle School, High School, middle school grades 6 through 8. We have obviously general education with a co-teacher inside the classroom. So we have a gen ed teacher and a co-teacher inside the same classroom. We also offer a basic skills where that's a smaller environment and smaller groups, so our teacher can really drill down on those skills that our students are deficient in. So whether it's writing skills, math skills, they're really hammering those home there and getting that extra practice. We also have a specialized program to support students with emotional disabilities, our Steps to Success with Mrs. Lopez. At the high school level, again, we have general education setting with co-taught classes. We offer 6 basic skills at the high school level. Again, it's a licensed special education teacher in there with a smaller number of students so that they can get that extra time that they need in those areas that they need to improve in. At Clark, we also offer a specialized program to help support students with the intense disabilities. It's applied skills before it used to be the CBE, community-based education. And I have here today, I have Ms. Dreschel. She's our case manager, and Mr. Four, our instructional coach. These two are key members of the team. They work hard daily in these areas, so I felt it was important for them to be here and be a part of this. So I'm going to go ahead and let Ms. Dreschel talk about our progress here.
All right, so these are our numbers from August. The freshmen, they're actually in gray because they hadn't come in with any credits. The expectation was 0 credits at that time. As a team, we decided that as a sophomore coming in, we want students to have at least 10 credits. There's an opportunity to earn 14 credits their freshman year. There are opportunities, 14 credits every single year, so that actually, I believe, adds up to 56 credit opportunities, but students need 40 to graduate in certain areas. In August, we had 18 sophomores coming in on track. Juniors, we had 16, and then seniors, we had 16%, which would actually be 67% of seniors were on track to graduate. The off track could actually be sophomores coming in with just 9 credits, so it's still high enough, but it wasn't enough for us to meet what we designated as on track. The not on tracks, those are students that maybe have 0, or they could have 5 credits, 2 credits. They didn't do so well on their freshman year. And then we just, how do you make this thing work? Okay. In January, so they had the whole first semester, we monitored our freshman students. Our goal for them was coming out of their first semester with 5 credits. We had 16 students that were able to earn at least 5 credits or more. Again, we had 4. They could have been 4 credits. They didn't meet our cutoff that we wanted for them. I do have to say, as you go through, we have our sophomores who are on track, who may have missed it. Every single one of those students that are not on track or on the red column, every single one of them did improve from the year or the August count. We only had 1 student that did not increase any credits. Overall, we have 75% of our seniors right now, and they're in their 2nd semester, on track to graduate in June, so that's amazing as well. And our numbers do, if you are a number person, you have access to this, the numbers may not match up from this chart to the one previous, because we do have a transient population. They'll move out, they'll move in. We have a student that actually withdrew first semester, but then came back in. He didn't actually go to the home school to earn any credits, so that can factor in as well. So looking at the numbers, right now we're sitting at 67%. Our goal is 70%. And 75% of our class of 2020 is on track to graduate in June. It also should be noted that students with disabilities do have the opportunity to continue until the age of 22 to earn those credits. So if you are a senior and say Algebra 1 is still challenging for you, geometry is getting a little more difficult, or you didn't take school seriously your freshman, sophomore year, there are opportunities for them to continue. But our goal is to get them on track and out the door when they need to, so they can go ahead and start their lives, whether that's going to college or joining the workforce. Some things that we are doing to help promote this, we have monthly special education department meetings where we progress monitor, talk about ways to do that. We talk about grade status, intervention, new policies that may be coming through, especially with the RDA that Mr. Preboy talked about. Teacher records meet regularly with their students. Also, every teacher is required to have a student learning objective or an SLO. Those are actually tied to failing grades this year, so teachers have more ownership in making sure those students are on track to earn those credits. We are constantly collaborating with our counselors. I also meet with students. I'll see them in the hallway. I'll ask them how their credit status is. And then we actually place a big importance on student responsibilities. I have 2 little snippets here that we actually use at all of our case conferences. So starting in 6th grade all the way to senior year, we want students to take ownership. And once we get into high school, we really talk about credits. Are you on track? How many credits do you have? Just making that awareness to students.
I'm Nathan Ford, the instructional coach. One of my responsibilities is to conduct our in-house professional development. So we found it very important that we embed our special education academic interventions into a whole school professional development, so all teachers are aware and supporting those academic interventions. An example of that was when Mr. Preboy came and gave a school PD on the read and reread, and then we embedded that into our PD, and one of our interventions are learning centers with Dr. McKnight, and we modeled read and reread as a learning center for all teachers to see. So we want all teachers and all students to be able to have access to those interventions and practice on a regular basis. In the second semester, we'll work with Snap and Read, and then we'll embed that into our in-house PD as well, so all teachers and all students will have access to those resources. In conjunction with that, Ms. Dreschel and our instructional team wanted to be more specific and direct with how we supported co-teaching. And so we identified co-teaching pairs that were critical to reaching our school goals. And we met with them, developed action plans that both co-teachers agreed upon, and developed a monitoring piece to ensure that our students were best impacted through the co-teaching model, and those resources were best used. So as we continue to work towards our TCI goals, we want to make sure that all students have access to these resources so they all gain success.
And just to stress, everything that we're doing now, whether it's students with special ed or gen ed, all of our students, everything's done with a purpose. We're trying to show the students that the support is there. We're trying to show them the importance of being responsible, accountable, the social emotional learning aspect of it, the life skills, and really just trying to build up their confidence, because obviously the harder they work, the greater success we're all going to have. So that's all we have. So any questions?
I was under the impression, well, I taught special ed for over 20 years, that the child can remain within the school setting at the age of 22 if they were in intense and moderates. Is that still?
So we've actually had a 7th year come back, which is amazing that he was so, I want to get my high school diploma. So it's actually to the age of 22. Typically you would only see it until, for more of the intense disabilities, but it's actually available for all students.
Because when I was teaching moderate and severe disabilities, those students were able to stay until they were 22. The others that were in the mainstream in special education, once they were 18 or 17,
right,
then they exited high school. So they were not in the school setting until they were 22.
So as long as I've been a case manager at Clark, we've had kids come back to work on those credits. But we do have the life skills program here in Hammond for
Right.
intense. Yeah.
For students till 22.
Yeah.
Okay. Great job. Thank you.
Were they to include the
Thank you very
expulsion
much.
and extension rate as well? Morton did. I was just thought it was going to be a consistent report.
They were instructed to address their plan for
Mr. Verda?
For addressing the special ed population at their school. That's all the instruction was.
Okay, well, it's just not as consistent. One provides one set of information, the other one doesn't. Okay, that was my question.
Okay, thank you.
Next.
Michelle Ondas, Gavitt, you want to come on up?
Good evening, Superintendent, President Mamala, board members. Okay, so Gavitt, we're going to talk about, like Robert Preboy said, I'm going to share with you our school improvement plan and all the activities that we do. Our efforts do touch the special education students, but once again, it is a general scope of what we're doing, and it affects the special ed students based on that general scope. So the first area of focus, our school has 3 areas of focus. It's math, it's formative math, it's PLCs, and then the third thing that we want to work on is the social emotional. So when we look at the math, we obviously look in our school improvement plan and see that our math scores are where our focus should be put on. So the stuff that we do for math is we create the math formative assessments, establish procedures for analyzing the data, look it over, remediation strategies, and we really want those students to own that important math formative assessments. And that is all based on John Hattie and Klut's formative assessments. So at this point of the stage of the game, we want some data, and when we look at the math NUIA data, we're able to see that from fall to winter, we've grown in every grade level, 6th, 7th, and 8th, as it pertains to math growth. So using that time and looking at the formative assessments, we are making growth at this point in time. So we hope to continue that. Like I said, our second area is really honing in on those PLCs, the collaboration piece. And so with that, we're looking at Richard DeFore's work, which is evidence-based, and talking about PLC time, making sure that time is meaningful, making sure we're talking about our children, what's working, what's not working, looking at failures, coming together as teachers and saying, how can we get our kids to have less failures? And so the results thus far have shown that about 80% of our high school students have 0 to 1 F. And about 85% or 86% of our middle school students have 0 or 1 F, which is pretty remarkable if you looked at the data that we had before we started our PLCs and developing how can we help our kids succeed. And one of the main things that we've done is really have that counseling piece come in and work with our students and really push the idea that not doing the work is not acceptable. We want all of our kids, those grades reflect their content knowledge. And so we don't allow zeros in the grade book. We want our kids to show us what they can do. We feel as though zeros do not reflect the content ability of our students. And because that is the mind shift of our teachers, the PLC time, we've been able to maintain this, which is amazing, because I think years past, we didn't have that mindset. And because we have that mindset, we're seeing less Fs. So the third, and then obviously I just threw in our reading data as well, which is, because of that PLC time, we're looking at reading data as well as the math data, although math is our #1 focus. And as you can see, the growth from 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade for this year's data from fall to winter has also increased. So our third one is that social learning competency and making sure that our students are socially, emotionally prepared. And, there's a lot of work there with Carol Dweck and mindset. And, once again, John Hattie, and making sure that what we do in the classroom is really in the best interest of students. And so the data for that would be, and I didn't put it in here, but would be showing our like Mr. Preboy talked about, showing our special ed and general ed suspensions being reduced by having a teacher in the ICBM room, because they are getting that full instruction and not being pulled away from instruction. So when we look at, this is all of our plans, when we look at what the administration, our instructional coach, and our teachers are doing, which I shared with you at the very beginning when we talked about this, I think our school improvement plan back in September, The only thing I added was what are some of the special education supports? And so for that math focus, we've really focused in on having that advisory time for kids in which they're doing math, not only in math class, but also in the advisory. We're helping them with the Ascend math. Our second area of focus, which is talking about that PLC and using rigorous instruction, we continue for the special education students to have conferences, annual conference reviews, have students set goals, and co-teaching and giving them basic skills. And then that third for that social emotional learning competencies, giving our special education kids that small advisory, having them role play situations, behavior plans, goals, and targets. And then some of the things that we do in our building in regards to the 9 types of modifications and accommodations for our special education students. We talk about quantity, input, participation, time, difficulty, alternative goals, level of support, the output, and substitute curriculum in terms of helping our students succeed and find success, because that's ultimately what it's about, is having our students find success. And this is a copy of our MTSS at Gavitt that we created in regards to our Tier 1, which is our general education, our Tier 2, which is students who need a little bit more support in those areas, and then our Tier 3 for kids who need more supports, and basically the academic, the social, emotional, and the behavior, the different things that we do within our building to help support our kids. So like Mr. Preboy said, it's not structured specifically to special ed because they're going to get it because we're doing it for all students.
Right.
So thank you very much. Oh, are there any questions?
Well, excellent in what you're doing, and it's with anything, it's all about the intervention, it's all about the resources, it's all what you're giving the students and that extra hands-on, differentiated instruction, the most support that you can give them, the co-teaching. Yeah, it's, I really, really like that. I really, really, really like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Andes.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call up Dr. Johnny Goodlow for Hammond High update.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of School Trustees, Superintendent Miller. I have the honor of presenting what we're doing as far as our TSI support in the area of special education at Hammond High School. First, I want to talk about how we got that designation. That designation of being a TSI school for Hammond High specifically dealt with 3 areas. The first area was the achievement of our special needs population on the math and English sections of the iStep Plus. That was a place of focus as far as how we became a TSI school. When we look at our graduation rate, the other area of focus was our special needs scholars graduating with more experiences within college career readiness exposure, whether that's dual credit classes, CTE, or project-based learning opportunities. And then the last part was keeping our special needs scholars from being out of school because of different situations, dealing with behavior or some type of trauma-influenced circumstance. So you're going to hear me talk about how we're intervening within those 3 areas. In our previous meeting with the School Improvement Plan, you heard me talk about our Power 45 initiative and using IXL, which is one of the best practices used throughout the state as far as honing in and spiraling remediation within math and English. We were able to get that started in late November, and as of this date, combined math and English as far as using IXL, between 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, they've completed 49,000 questions. Right now, that's a total of almost 2,000 skills practiced, but the proficiency and the mastery is key because within that, they've become proficient in over 1,000 skills and have mastered over 399. The goal when you use IXL is to try to get up to 50,000 problems solved within a month. Well, now that we're close to 50, the benchmark has been raised to 80,000 within us using the spiraling method using IXL. When we go into the math portion, we're focusing on number sense, systems of equations, and the quadratics, which are focuses within the iStep Plus test. Within the English side, we're doing inferencing, which is a big problem within our scholars within our English classes. And so the results, when we look at our 9th and 10th grade NWA data from fall to winter is that we've seen growth. Usually the ideal growth within NWA in the high school is around a year or a point, if you will. In the math, you see that point that's been done in math and English, in math in 9th and 10th grade, but you see at least 3 points on the English side, which is significant because that equates to about 3 years growth. So we're starting to see some reward within the spiraling, but hopefully it translates to some success within the I-STEP assessment. We talked a lot about, you heard a lot about collaboration and coming with a collaborative effort to try to meet the needs of the schools through our school improvement plan. So part of our plan is that we now receive technical assistance from a consultant from Indiana IEP, which is a state entity through Indiana State University. And we have a specific consultant to help us implement different portions of our TSI support for our special needs scholars within our school improvement plan. And so when we met with our consultant, who is Mr. Victor Torres, and he used to be part of the district and taught special ed at Scott for a number of years in our ED classrooms, we focused on 2 things that we think will get the biggest bang for our buck, which is becoming more trauma responsive as a school, and then looking at the different models of co-teaching and make sure that they're being implemented with fidelity. And I'll get into that. So within the trauma sensitive portion, we're sending down a delegation to go down and become more trauma resilient through this professional development this week in Indianapolis with 2 of the leaders within being more trauma responsive as a school. That's Pete Hall and Kristen Sowers. So that takes place in Indianapolis with that team. But even with that, we're going to have in our April faculty meeting, Mr. Torres is going to conduct this for our whole staff so that our staff as a school becomes more trauma sensitive and being able to meet the needs of our kids coming through the door, whether they're special ed or general ed. Because I service as a school and we service probably some of the most marginalized students that come in through the school city of Hammond. They have the most diverse needs. And to be able to meet their needs coming in the door is very big. So that's how within our April faculty meeting that's going to take place. We're working on a transformation of our zone, just as Morton is. We've identified someone in our staff to look toward becoming licensed, still trying to massage that situation to have that licensed teacher within the zone to help reduce the suspensions. Right now, we have decreased the number of suspensions. We only have 1 expulsion, and but we're still wanting to decrease the number overall. So that would be something that we're working on right now, and it's still a work in progress. I mentioned the implementation of co-teaching right now within our models. Well, within our special education staff, I must say, we have a number of our teachers who are in special needs education programs, but they're still trying to get their licensure together. So we have 1 highly licensed, and we still have some working on their licensing. So for them to have the complete picture of what co-teaching looks like within the different models is just not there. So we have the 1 Teach, 1 Assist, which is usually your go-to in special ed, but there's still some other models that could possibly give us the biggest bang for our buck with better implementation and monitoring. So within our next faculty meeting in May, that's what we're going to focus on, the other 5 forms of co-teaching. And that is 1 Teach, 1 Observe, parallel teaching, station teaching, alternative teaching, and team teaching. And to get those things under our teachers so that they can have that support that they need, even though they're going through the programs, it's just not there yet. So that's another focus that we're going to do through that collaboration through Indiana IEP and our consultant. Now, what it's going to look like is we're going to end the school year with general education and the co-teachers getting together, because most planning takes place as far as within your 5-year plan. It takes place during the summer. Of course, they're going on vacations or whatnot, but this is where you really just plan for the next school year. So we're going to end it as far as going through those models of co-teaching and expose them to it and have them start going through that and choosing what would be best. But then we're going to kick it off at the beginning of the year with a revisit to the whole thing with a plan as far as monitoring, walkthroughs, and implementing it with fidelity within our classrooms. We mentioned MTSS in a number of our schools, and we also have an MTSS team that meets Mondays, and we talk about specific behaviors and kids and their success or what have you. But one of the things that we've implemented specifically for Tier 3, even more specifically, our male scholars, is a program that we call the Significant, and that's in conjunction with Healthy Heart, Healthy Minds Consultant, which is Dr. Anthony Grady. We have about a good 25 to 30 male scholars who we call the significant, that has probably some of the most issues, that need the most support. And so what happens within this program is that Dr. Grady comes Tuesdays and Thursdays, and he pulls those scholars out on a one-to-one basis as far as mentoring and also with groups. And so we try to keep those kids, and the focus is seniors, to be sure that they are on track to graduate, and being sure that whatever circumstances that they're going through, we keep them in school and not get them out, so they can be part of the number and increase that graduation rate. And so that has had a significant impact already in fruition, because he meets them on the level. He's not talking above them. He meets them right where they are, and he provides that support through one-to-one mentoring and through groups. For our full staff, as far as instructional design, which was mentioned, we're going to have Dr. Crystal Laura come in, and she's going to do a specific professional development for all teachers, but it focuses basically on urban education, and more specifically, the secrets to thriving as a teacher in urban education. Not every teacher can teach in our schools.
Right.
And I'm just going to say it like it is. So in order to have that, you have to have a certain toolkit to be able to teach in urban education. So she's going to go through that, 10 specific action steps to help better service our kids of color, and also a pedagogical framework to organize your teaching and learning specific to the needs of the scholars at Hammond High School or in urban education. The last part is another overarching deal as far as meeting that college and career readiness, and it's been mentioned as far as project-based learning. We have a project-based learning cluster that we're bringing back at Hammond High School, and with the move that's going on as far as with the two high schools and the consolidation, and with project-based learning being evident, it's best to start getting the teachers to understand that learning by design dynamic once again, the beginning with the end in mind, and embedding that college and career readiness in the 4 C's of the collaborative of the 21st century learner. So we're going back to the project-based learning cluster for all teachers, and we're going to culminate with our project-based learning night May 7th this year. And so those clusters will focus throughout, and this is the roadmap for those clusters as far as how to properly plan project-based learning activities. Although it's going to be through 4NGL, it's just a means of reintroducing, but introducing to my staff, because I have a significant number of new staff members, as far as what project-based learning looks like. So it's not meant to teach what new tech brings, but it's meant to expose them to what project-based learning looks like, and also to expose our scholars to what a culmination looks like, because they'll have to present to the community as far as solving those real-world problems. And that's it. Any questions?
Well, excellent. I really like that you're having Dr. Grady come in and pull those more challenged scholars out, because our students today need that. Number 2, you're absolutely right, with teachers today that are not used to teaching in an urban corporation. I always taught in an urban corporation. I taught in School City of East Chicago. Those teachers that are not aware of how to teach in an urban corporation, they do need that extra help, that extra mentoring, those extra resources, because it is, it could be a challenge for them. So great, excellent.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call Allison Lenzo from O'Bannon.
Good evening, Superintendent Miller, President Mamala, and school board members. I'm going to go ahead and get started with our mid-year TSI goal update. I did not include any of our SIP data because I shared that with you previously at our meeting in November. So specifically for our TSI goal for special education, we wanted to get 5% or more of our students with an IEP in grades 3 to 5 to pass the ELA section of iLearn. So we were specifically under what the state was expecting. Being a Title I school, we were in that bottom 5% for English language arts. As you can see in 17-18, it was 15.6% of our students with special ed passing, and then it dropped to 10.5%, being that it was a new test, it did drop across the state of Indiana. So we want to definitely get 5% or more of our students to pass. With that being said, even though it's 3 through 5, we wanted to start with all of our students in kindergarten, and actually we have special ed preschool at our building as well. And those teachers do a lot of amazing things, and we do collaborate with them when we have meetings. But specifically K-1, for all of our students, we added strategic phonemic awareness and phonics lessons in our literacy block. And we based that on the Orton-Gillingham screener. We also had some teachers attend the Orton-Gillingham training, and then this summer I'm hoping to send some more teachers. With that as well, we do repeated reading for students at our building, especially for our special education students. And when we looked at our data over the summer, when we met in August as a team, you know, when you hear special ed, often you forget about speech. So when we looked at our speech students and their passing rate, we realized that a lot of our speech students weren't passing. So our speech teacher does an amazing job, Ms. Vasic, and she does repeated reading with her speech students as well, because those IEP students are in that subgroup. We provide extra guided reading lessons at O'Bannon for our students with IEPs in kindergarten through 5th grade, and the general ed teacher and special ed teacher work together. So the special education teacher's in the general ed room, and they may pull a small group of students, and it may include a speech student. It may also include an RTI student. So this way we're meeting the needs of all students at the building. We have My Virtual Reading Coach, which is also known as MindPlay. And we have that for our students with IEPs through 3rd through 5th grade. And we did use Title I money this year to purchase that for all of our 4th and 5th graders. And we have majority of our 3rd graders. So just we didn't have enough money to fund all of our 3rd graders this year. We have remediation for all of our students, but we specifically provided remediation this year for our 3rd through 5th grade students with IEPs, and it's instructed by the special ed teacher because they know those students the best, so that's offered before or after school. It started in January, and it will continue until April. And then we also meet monthly as a special ed team for collaborations, and either I guide those meetings or my case manager, Kelly Patterson, she guides those meetings. So this was really exciting for us when we looked at our data. As you can see, it's color-coded and is tracked from year to year. So our kindergartners last year who met their mid-year NWA ELA growth, because it was specifically ELA, we had 57% last year, and now they're in 1st grade, and we have 62% who met that mid-year goal. 1st grade last year, we had 37%. Out of those, now we have 55%. Our biggest jump was our 2nd to 3rd graders. Last year, 37. This year, 87. 3rd grade last year, we had 40. This year in 4th, they're at 60. And then our 4th grade was at 33% last year, and this year we're at 66. So we're really excited with that data, and we've shared it with the building. We do data presentations. Our data team does that 3 times a year. So all of this was shared with all of our staff at our data meeting in February. So just a reminder, at O'Bannon, everybody has a superpower inside of them waiting to be discovered. Do you have any questions for me? All right, thank you.
Wow, I love the increase in the scores.
Thank you. We're excited.
Yes.
We're hoping we're going to see a big jump on, at least that jump on the I Learn when we take it.
Yeah, because I know with the testing, it's I know.
So different, but we were excited too. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great work.
Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our last TSI school, Jeremy Hicks for Scott Middle School.
Good evening, Superintendent Miller, President Mamala, members of the board. Tonight I would like to introduce myself. I'm Jeremy Hicks, principal of Scott Middle School, and although they may not want me to acknowledge, I got to recognize our school teacher, Ms. Brandy Oldham, in the audience, and our Dean of Students, Angelique Rodriguez-Jones. Also, anyone watching, thank you for the support. So we're here to present our TSI, or Targeted Support and Improvement School Update for Charles and Scott Middle School. One thing that we started our school year, and a lot of what we heard tonight is alignment. We aligned our school improvement plan with what we're doing at Scott Middle School. So one thing that we've looked at prior to our school day starting in August was what's going to be our 2 target areas where we can encompass and relate to everything. So Two ideas that we came up with was self-care and connections, building those relationships with students, taking care of oneself so that way you're in a good state of mind to be in school, whether you're a parent, guardian, student, or staff member. So as we presented our school improvement plan, not much has changed from October until now when we presented. But if you look at specifically why we're here tonight, our special education population has remained the same. And when you look at 18% of our population receive services through special education, that's approximately 150 students in our building. So Scott Middle School is fortunate enough to have almost every, if not every, program that services students with all abilities and specifically students with disabilities. So it's one of the things that we're privileged and honored to do. So we take to heart the students that we service, and more specifically through special education, we're able to offer additional supports for students with specific needs, whether it be administration, our instructional coach, or teachers. We're all on the front line together supporting all of our students and more specifically providing those much needed additional supports. So the question is, what are we doing? One thing that we've been able to do throughout the years and currently this year really hone in and laser focus our efforts is our instructional time. So it's fortunate that we're able to offer our reading blocked instructional times with grades 6, 7, and 8, and 6 and 7 in the area of math, and also in reading English language arts for all grade levels. So the thing that we found out is the more time that we have to support students to directly instruct, the more positive results we have been able to obtain. So in addition of those resources that we are able to have, we use Edmentum, Study Island, Khan Academy, MindPlay, Ascend. Those are the software programs that our students are able to through what we have to offer at School City of Hammond. So we're one of the groups that, one of the schools that have restructured our ICBM, as many of us are familiar, BIS, ISS. This year the mindset has been a change where it's an academic behavior resource support room. So we service all students, and more specifically, the students that are in there, they're receiving that academic support that traditionally was either void or absent in previous years. So we identified at-risk students. We have many mentor and mentee support programs, check-in and out sheets to monitor student progress. As we had noted before through different either social media postings or presentations, Alpha Phi Alpha has been, Fraternity Incorporated has been a strong program, mentoring program, sponsor. PATH, which is a positive approach to teen health, classroom support. They come in and do intervention support with our classroom students. And then this year we were fortunate enough to have the Youth Lead Student Mentor Program, which is a student-led mentoring program led by students, by students for students. And also, as many of us have mentioned today, PBIS, Mindfulness, Trauma-Informed Environment, Universal Design for Learning, and then this weekend we're also sending a group of teachers who attended the session 1 last year and are doing the session 2 this weekend down in Indianapolis. So that's, thank you for that, for providing that support. So one thing that is like immediate, you ask, well, what's happening in the classrooms? What's our data say? So if you look at our trend of total failures or classroom Fs, the amount of students have decreased almost year over year. Last year we had our greatest numbers, but if you look at the total Fs for grading period 1, that's when students first come in, we had 714 total Fs with 302 students. So the next slide is the most different slide that we have. So if you look, we dropped significantly from grading period 1 to 2, and more specifically from last year to this school year, this fall or winter season, which we typically have the most amount of failures, we dropped it significantly from 805 to 517, 366 to 229. So we have less students receiving failing grades. So as many of the schools mentioned, like 0 is not an option, failure is not an option. We have provided additional supports to our mentoring programs, through classroom guidance, through co-teaching, through a lot of efforts that working with parents and guardians just to say what can we do to help classroom performance. When you look at our assessments that we use as a tool, the highlighted yellow areas are the teams that service students that receive services. And most, if not all, of the teams have almost reached their end of year goals. So if you look at 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, they're at least halfway to reaching their goal, if not a couple points short of obtaining their goals. So it's huge growth that we've seen in both areas of math and reading for our local assessment using our NWEA data. So this is a quick summary of what was just mentioned. So if you look at the difference, 714 to 302, 517 and 229, the growth average that we have as a goal for looking at math is 5.92, and as an average we're at 4.13, so we're real close at mid-year of obtaining our end-of-year growth goal. Same thing goes for reading. 4.65 is our goal end of year, and we're at 4.12. And one thing in our school improvement plan, as we talked about, the more time instructing, the better results we're going to get. Our goal is 95% attendance, and at mid-year we're at 96%. So our students are in the classroom at school more often. And one thing that was mentioned was suspension rates. Last year we were at 490 total suspensions both in and out. This year, current year, as of last week, we're at 327. So it's about a 34% reduction, just restructuring the way we do things a little bit at Scott Middle School. So these are our continued interventions and next steps. Focus and refocus on those tier 3 students. The continued math and ELA interventions, we're also doing professional development that we're fortunate to have that Dr. McKnight come in and offer some support. School-wide and team interventions and strategies, that monthly cross collaboration, our teachers are able to meet as a team. Continue target interventions through targeted groups, mentoring programs, and then the school-wide picture, which is receiving all students, that social emotional learning, academic and behavior performance, student attendance, and then that universal design, which is good practices for all. So thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate your support.
Great job.
Thank you.
Great job with the interventions, the support, everything that you're doing, reducing the amount of failing grades. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we do have 2 schools that were identified as comprehensive school improvement. Call their principals up to explain. We'll start with Dr. Yanders at Eggers.
Yeah, I'm the short person. Good evening, President Mamala, Superintendent Miller, Board Trustees. So I'm going to give you a little highlight on Eggers Middle School. We're going to start off with our demographics. In our subgroups, so we're a CSI school, which means that we have more subgroups than the TSI schools. And for the most part, when you break it down, we have 5 subgroups that we have to make sure that we're paying attention to. But if you look at the population, our enrollment at Eggers Middle School is our entire building. We have 42.5% of our population is Hispanic, 49.3% is African American. So when you look at that, that's once again the whole school. Those are our subgroups. So I want you guys to remember this when I get ready to break it down to subgroups, because many of the strategies that we're implementing at Eggers Middle School is going to address all of our students. So no matter how you slice it, every last one of our students are in one of these subgroups, whether it be free and reduced lunches, or you have the our special education population, or our ELLs. So this was our total school performance for last year. 26.4% of the total population passed ELA, and 12% passed math on the iLearn exam. This right here is the breakdown of our students when it talks about subgroups and our Hispanic students. The NWA is It's a benchmark assessment that lets us know how students are progressing on certain skills. So if we're looking at our skills and you're looking at this, the growth from fall to winter for Hispanic students only, you see a lot of regression taking place. I'm going to say that most of this regression is, for those of y'all that don't know, we have a lot of permanent substitute teachers. So we don't have a lot of highly qualified teachers in our building. But as I always mention, we're going to always make lemonade out of lemons. When it comes to African Americans, however, we do have a lot of growth that is taking place among our African American students. They are moving in every grade level, language arts, and math as well. We want to say, so we had a big discussion about what is the difference, because they're in the same classrooms, like what is the difference? And we all know, because we are in tune with the cultural nature of our students, that our African American students are more vocal in their needs, where many of our Hispanic students are not as vocal in their needs. So we feel like maybe their vocal nature is they're out there and they're asking for the help. And our Hispanic students, we have to, through our SEL efforts, we're going to find ways to make sure that they are vocalizing their needs too as well. So supports, the supports that we have for each subgroup is the same, because once again, I said, remember the populations and the subgroups that we have at Eggers Middle School. It is going to be difficult for us to say, well, we're going to just target this group of students and this group of students, when we know that all of our students need supports. So we have a lot of supports in place. The use of stations allow for differentiation of instruction to address the needs of our students. Uniformity of strategies across all content areas helps to build confidence and strengthen their skills. One of the strategies that we use is race, and that's across all content areas, whether it be music, math, language arts. Focus advisories for language arts and math. Previously, before getting this data, so we always like to dig into the data. Before we got the data for the winter assessment, we had themed advisories Monday through Friday. Well, we looked at the data, we addressed the data, we're making changes to our strategies as well as our remediation time. And that's going to lead to number 4, the R time for math built into the schedule that begins this Monday. So what we did was we looked into all of the data for the NWA. We also used the iLearn data for each one of our students from last year, and we placed them into classrooms where the only focus is going to be math. So looking at the data that I just showed you and the data I'm going to show you for special ed as well as our ELL population, the math is the place where we're really hurting the most. So the R time is for math, where they will be in remediation every day, Monday through Friday, right before the lunches begin. We figured that's the best time to provide remediation. In the morning, they're still a little groggy. In the afternoon, I don't know what it is that's in that lunch, but yeah. So we're looking at, that's the perfect time for us to build in that remediation time. Camp I Can. So Camp I Can is something that this is where we're going to have targeted students in the Camp I Can. Our math and language arts teachers are going to use that NWA data, the MAP data, to specifically target certain students that they're going to have, sort of like as a boot camp right before the iLearn assessments take place. And this is just the same slide for those, the ELLs that we have in place too. As you can see that they have they have some areas where they have growth at the 6th grade level. When it comes to the other grade levels, that's the 7th and the 8th grade levels, that's where most of our permanent substitute teachers are at. So that's why our other teachers are not getting the support that they need. And that's even in our social studies class, because social studies and language arts work well together. Social studies is used, that content is used to support language arts. So that's where many of our permanent subs are located. I want to say it's no one's fault. Same thing with special education. So for special education, out of our 3 language LD teachers, 2 of them are permanent subs. And one of them just came this semester. So we don't have the staffing that's needed to make the gains that we need to do. We're still not going to let that bother us. We're going to make lemonade out of lemon. and it's no one's fault. No one is coming into teaching, and that's just a national concern. But we're doing the best that we can with what we have. Okay, and these are some of the supports that we have for our special ed teachers special ed students to address their needs in absence or absentia of unlicensed teachers. So we have the co-talk classes. Also, our special ed teachers that are on board, they are taking on the caseload from those teachers that are substitute teachers. So our teachers that are in the CBE classes, they're taking on some of the caseload from the students in the LD classes. After school tutoring is going to be available also to them, and also, as Mr. Preboy talked about, a lot of the things that they're going to do to assist us in those efforts, the purchase of more licenses for Mind Play as well as Ascend.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to speak with the board tonight. I'm going to speak specifically on our free and reduced population, and then speak a little bit about our challenges and where we're planning to go next. As you can see, our free and reduced population is not over 90% of our school. So as Dr. Yander said, to isolate this specific group, we are ultimately targeting most kids in our building. And what we see with our students is a way to provide them the opportunities that they're struggling with at home. And so our interventions and responses for this was the creation of an after-school homework lab. Licensed teachers are in that lab after school. The number of parents who are requesting tutoring and assistance. We wanted to ensure that we were doing something to meet that need for both our parents, our families, and our students. So students are able to stay after school and get that help with their work from a licensed teacher. We've also opened up our library during lunch hours to provide them additional time, access to computers, access to materials so they can continue their work that was not completed in the classroom. All of our students do receive free breakfast and free lunches, but we do want to ensure that our kids are eating. So we do provide that time in the morning for all students to be able to access that lunch so they're fueled for the school day. And then as Dr. Yander said, more of an intervention approach is the creation of Our Time and CAP I Can, where we're going to be targeting all students during our time and specific targeted students through the camp. Some areas of challenges that we've been able to identify is the limited access to technology. This past last week, actually, we finally received our Chromebooks. So we created a schedule since the beginning of the school year that incorporated a one-to-one for our students. Unfortunately, because of situations outside of our control, we finally received the Chromebooks last week. We are very excited. They were rolled out. I think today they're finally fully rolled out to all teachers. But it's targeted as well, which I'll talk about in just a second. Unfortunately, we have a very high turnover rate in staff. Permanent substitutes, which unfortunately are mostly in our core content areas, math, special ed. As Dr. Yander said, we have 3 co-teachers in the building. 2 are long-term subs. One of the positions, we've actually had 3 different long-term subs in that position this school year. That grouping of students, consistency is key. Highly qualified teachers is key, so we're facing some challenges there. And then, of course, we have a high number of students dealing with personal trauma. Dr. Goodlow said it very clearly as we feed into Hammond High School. So we need to come up with ways in which we can support and respond to those issues that aren't academic issues, which leads to where we're heading next. With the rollout of technology, Chromebooks, we have strategically targeted the classrooms, the content areas that students are going to be able to receive that. One-to-one is important because it allows for individualized instruction through the programs that we do have available to us. So every single English teacher, every single math teacher now has their own set of laptops that they will be using, Chromebooks that they'll be using in their classrooms. So that is a guarantee now. We can target and individualize instruction for our students. We're partnering with Equitable Education Solutions, and our staff is receiving frequent professional development. Specifically, we're targeting visible thinking routines and depth of knowledge. This is going to increase both the rigor in the classroom and the important academic discourse. So what we are seeing through this implementation is an increase in expectation, placing that learning on the students as opposed to the teachers doing all of the work. Equitable Education Solutions are providing after-school PD for both our English teachers and our math teachers that are specifically focusing on strategies that target those two content areas. So while all teachers are getting kind of strategies that can be implemented no matter what, we do know that there are specific strategies that are better for math and English, and they're receiving those after school. I have to say our teachers maybe right now are developing such a large tool belt it's hard for them to keep it pulled up, but that's what we want, right? And so one thing that we're doing to increase that is the implementation. Ooh, I thought I put it up here. Oh, here we go. The implementation of peer triads. So it's a system that we have in our building where we are grouping teachers in a cluster of 3. It provides them opportunities to get feedback on strategies that they are learning in their classroom, and then also the opportunity to go see other teachers to see how that's going. It's going beautifully. The conversations that we're getting from teachers is, hey, I was thinking about doing that, but I never thought to do it that way, and I saw this teacher do it, so now I'm going to kind of flip my approach in my classroom. And that's exactly what we want out of the teachers. We want to provide support for all of these new strategies that they're implementing. We are working on the creation of curriculum maps through the district with Equitable Education Solutions. More specifically, this is identifying power standards in English and math. It's going to provide proficiency scales. So we're assessing all students to the exact same level, high expectations. So we know what that proficiency, that mastery looks like. And then tiered formative assessments. All of this, the plan is to roll out next year. But our teachers are active participants in that, so I do believe that there's great progress that's being made that could be implemented now as well. One of my biggest passions is implementing SEL, specifically a program that we have. We have mindfulness in our building. I welcome you in the morning because all of our students start off the day with mindfulness meditation. So it's a way for them to focus in on their learning and in our school building. We've rolled out SEL curriculum, very specific lessons that are taught to all students. It's tailored 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And inclusion of that is something that we called open sessions. It's an opportunity to teach our students collective empathy by having them work through problems at a peer level instead of this idea that an adult is telling you how to solve a problem. So it's that idea where now I get ideas, but I'm actually learning more from trying to help somebody else. It's quite structured, but very successful. I have to say, as a side note, the number of more serious incidences that have come up through open sessions that we've been able to intervene. I always say, well, if we didn't have this program, what would have been another way for a student to be able to communicate this need? So I do think it's really hitting more of that trauma interventions quite appropriately and successfully. We have partnered with Franciscan, so we do have a monthly professional development led by Jean Lubeskis. She focuses on ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, informing our staff about that, about trauma in general and brain development. It's been incredibly eye-opening to see that many of these things are kind of out of the control of students, so then what can we do to intervene? We're increasing parent contact. We have a new policy in which students that are receiving Ds and Fs, the teachers are required a certain number, frequency, and type of parent contact so we can intervene early. And it's not something that they're just seeing on a report card and wondering why that communication was not there. So before Ds and Fs can be issued on a report card, there must be proof of very specific, consistent, and quality communication with the parents. And finally, in general, we're looking at focusing on increasing our rewards. We focus so much on the lower end of our students and see that our higher skilled students are not being acknowledged or provided with that opportunity for continued growth. So while we target this side, we also want to make sure that we target those higher ability students as well.
And so when it comes to targeting our higher skilled or higher ability students, this evening, I haven't met with the other principals yet, but the middle school principals and myself worked together to bring a program from Northwestern University, the Young Scholars Program, in which many of our students, 6th and 7th graders, met at the ACC. That's not in the slides. And the person who came from Northwestern was only expecting about 10 students. We had 50 that came out. So we are trying to address our high ability students as well as our low ability students, using our SEL to address the emotional needs of our students, bringing the shyness out of my Hispanic babies and helping them, come let us know, express what they need. As well as the staff, those SEL strategies, as well as the staff, the triads, the peer triads. We do have a shortage of highly qualified teachers, but the peer triads is a way of allowing those, even substitute teachers, to go to visit other classrooms to see some effective strategies. And as always, I have a fighting spirit. I never give up. So I wanted to end with this quote: "The strongest people aren't those who always win, but those who don't give up when they lose." And that's what I entail in my students as well. Never give up.
Well, you're doing a great job over there, and you're trying every day, and I absolutely understand it. The teaching profession has dwindled down.
Yes, it has.
When I began teaching in '93, the only time we saw a substitute is if a teacher was sick. Now no one is interested in the profession anymore.
Even substitute teachers, that is down. Even when we have our weekly professional development and it's embedded in our schedule, some of our teachers can't attend professional development in a week because they have to cover classes.
Right, right. Do you have a lot of parent volunteers? Parents volunteering there?
The parents that we do have, we don't have a lot, but the ones that do come, they come mainly for their child. They'll come and sit in the classroom with their child, but just to do regular volunteer, no.
Okay. Well, good job.
We're trying.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Madam President?
Yes, Trustee Miller.
Quick question to Superintendent Miller.
Yep.
I wonder about the delay on the Chromebooks.
Yep. The delay on the Chromebooks was our difficulty in getting the parent signature releases at the high schools.
Okay.
Gavitt was right on board first, and then Clark, and then Morton. And we had set a threshold of 90%, and that a parent would just say that yes, the child can take the Chromebook at no cost to the parent or anything. But that was the delay, was getting those forms back.
So it was actually a delay beyond Eggers.
Eggers had nothing to do with it. It was that carts
all
would
of
be
our
coming
schools.
down to them after
Gotcha.
got the new ones. That was the difficulty.
Gotcha.
Did it affect any other schools?
Actually, we plan to bring them down to all of the schools, yes. So yes, it's affected all the schools, the challenge in getting the parent releases back. I met with the principals. We tried different things. We did Parent Square. We sent out messages. They met with each child multiple times individually and gave them another copy of the form to take it home to get it signed. And yet still, we really struggled to get the form signed.
And we couldn't move those resources from the high schools
Correct.
down because we couldn't implement the new program at the high school. Okay, I just
Correct.
want to make sure that I understand. I know we took steps early in the year to make sure, and so I was kind of surprised to hear that they were just getting them now. So.
Yep.
Well, moving forward, we just, again, be more proactive in these situations because it's only harming our students, when they don't have the resources, as Trustee Mamala indicated with Gavitt, they had the resources. If you don't have the resources, you're not going to get the results. So we just have to be a little more proactive when it comes to situations like this. We got to start doing something new and not dependent on how we did it years ago, because it is these kids' academics that are suffering. Simple as that. It's resources.
I was very open to any suggestions from everybody on how to increase that. We did use the Parent Square so we could send out text messages to those that we didn't get it back. But it was also, we felt it was important that a parent gave us permission, because these are take-home devices, that they acknowledged that their child was going to be taking home a device and assuming responsibility for it when it was home.
Right.
And that is not uncommon to Hammond. I mean, that's a standard operating procedure for school districts that issue laptops to students to take home. You get parent permission. I mean, that's respecting the parent's role in it. We have very few deny like that, and we have a situation for that if they don't want it at home, where they can check one out from the library. But for the vast majority of kids, it was just a matter of fact of getting the form back, and we didn't anticipate it would be this difficult to get it back, but it has been challenging.
I'm sorry, one more question. So,
Yes.
will we have the same process, or have to go through the same process next year, again at the high school level, for them to be able to take those home?
No, next year it will be part of the online enrollment.
Okay.
Which is, I don't have every detail on exactly that, but we will need everyone to fill out the registration. We may look at a face-to-face registration day for those who don't want to do, like a district-wide, one day, this is our registration day, for those who don't want to fill out the online enrollment. But certainly online enrollment is the easiest way to complete the forms and get them submitted.
Thank you. That sounds like a great way to try to address that. So thank you for that information.
Yeah, you're welcome. I apologize to the audience. I really need to use the restroom. Can we take 5
Yes.
minutes? All right.
We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
by the state, by Indiana School Board Association.
All right, we will now resume the meeting.
They're identified by federal and then the state uploads
All right, our last comprehensive school improvement school is Wallace. Lori Thursby.
Good evening to the board and Superintendent Miller. I'm going to try to hold my papers up here. And my presentation, I'm just going to be honest, is a little short. Okay? Yes, thank you. Okay. It looks a little different in that I did not include our SMART goals because that was done in a presentation previously. What I did is I just sort of focused in on what we're doing holistically as a school. And one of the things I also need to explain, as far as a comprehensive support CSI school, ours is based on the fact that we received the letter grade of F, okay, for several years. However, for the 2018-2019 school year, we are a D, so we are moving up. And in part, it's due to the great teachers and the staff in our building, so thank you to all of our Bobcat students and staff that are watching. So when we looked at our school, we turned the focus onto us specifically. So when we did our comprehensive needs assessment, the CNA, which is part of being a CSI school you have to do, we realized it's our instruction, okay? So what we're focusing on is, as a school, is our curriculum and our instruction. So with that being said, let me get my clicker. Oops. There we go. So and also you heard the other schools talk about this, so it's going to be similar things, especially with regards that we feed into Eggers and then Hammond High. So as a district, we're working on the curriculum maps, which was something that we, the Bobcats, Wallace, was starting off with. That was something that we decided we needed a curriculum that all of us understood, we supported. So we are part of the process of creating the curriculum. We've got the teachers, myself, Ms. Hawkins, we're working on that. We've already identified priority standards. We're working on the units of study. Along with what Mr. Preboy said as far as John Hattie and looking at those types of strategies that give us the biggest bang for our buck. Our teachers are involved in PD, with regards to visible thinking strategies, which also they're doing at Eggers in conjunction with Equitable Education Services. So some of the things that we've been working on are helping students think about their own thinking, which is going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. So our PD is focused on that. And then also with our PD, now the teachers are actually teaching teachers some of those strategies, because we know if you don't actually do it once in a while, you're never going to do it with the kids. So it's a sort of a reflective piece on the teachers too. And then myself and Ms. Hawkins, the assistant, we're being trained on a walkthrough form, which is non-evaluative, which helps support our teachers also. So those are some of the things we're working on. Oops. And then with our SEL, which is something that you've heard from all the schools, social emotional learning, we started off the school year with the presentation to the staff with the Department of Ed resources. We also continue to do our morning meetings, which sets the tone for the day with our students. All the teachers, also the first 20 days, taught SEL lessons and then revisited those. We've done a book study for Lost at School by Dr. Ross Green, which helps the teachers to identify those triggers and the lagging skills of our students, because that's what we're finding. Our students are becoming upset and emotional, and part of that is they don't have the skills to deal with that. So that's what we're working on with SEL. With some of the things that we've already implemented, our office referrals are down 35% from February to February. We also have a check-in, check-out system for our students, which has really supported those students that are dealing with emotional difficulties that they don't know how to deal with. So that's Ms. Hawkins. She's doing a great job with that. She meets with groups of students to sort of get them set for the day, and then she also has them check in again at the end of the day to sort of see what their day looked like. Playworks training, which is supporting our social emotional learning too. Playworks training is the recess program, and we've gone through 2 days of training already, which helps our recess team develop strategies, procedures for recess. So it's about being respectful, responsible, safe, being kind and having fun at recess. But our students don't know how to take turns, do resolution of a conflict in a way that is non-threatening and non-harmful. So we spent 2 days training with that. We have a follow-up in April. The kids are already loving that. We've already started playing the games during gym and also at recess. And then one of the pieces of data that we wanted to share with you, everyone's talking about their NWA data, so are we. So this is the percentage of students who have already met their projected goal. You remember they have to the end of the year to meet it. So we're looking positively towards the future for much more of our students to reach that. The one thing I do want to hesitate, or I should explain, with the NWA goals, a student is expected to make a year's growth. So from wherever they start, a year's growth. However, you have to remember some of these students are down in the red. So they are growing, but they're still well below grade level. So that's something that, when we look at our data, that's one of the things that we're always trying to keep in mind, and we're trying to develop a way to look at the data to sort of progress and chart those students more specifically. Okay, any questions? Tried to keep it short, right to the point.
Well, you're doing an excellent job and meeting the students' needs, and so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori. Just so the audience understands, even a school that is only targeted school improvement, if you do not address your goal, you can still become subject to all of the penalties of school takeover, such as having to remove the administration, such as having to replace over 50% of the teaching staff, such as having to close down the school. So you could even have an A letter grade, and if you don't meet that goal, you are still subject to those penalties. So they are serious. We are, obviously, you can see each of our administrators are trying to tackle them in the best way to meet the needs of their school, but it definitely is a challenge. Okay, our last presentation is Mrs. Esther Goods, our Executive Director of Secondary, with an update on our Hammond Virtual School.
Good evening, Superintendent Miller and board members, Board of Trustees. Students in the Virtual Academy participate in grades 6 through 12. Clicker, sorry. Students are enrolled in 6 courses at a time. They work at their own pace. We use the School City of Hammond grading scale. They have access to all extracurricular activities, including prom, homecoming, band, HAPA, access to athletics if they enroll at least one face-to-face. Currently no field trips, and we are currently working to integrate CTE. Students enroll for various reasons, ranging from pregnancy to difficult home situations. The enrollment takes place via student services, who meets with each student and then refers the students to the Virtual Academy counselor. We take medical emergency students, special needs students. Each student is enrolled in the homeschool, and because it's an academy, it should have less than 100 students. Technology. It's a virtual academy. It's a one-to-one program. Students are eligible for use of the School City of Hammond Chromebooks, and they too are required to complete the parent information form. Counseling services are provided to all students enrolled. They talk about the Core 40 high school graduation requirements, transcripts, career options. Students have access to School City of Hammond breakfast and lunch. And the testing coordinators make sure that the students are tested regularly. Enrollment numbers. To date, we have 21 seats that are used. 4 of those students are out of district, and 2 receive special needs services. So 21 full-time seats are used, and 79 full-time seats remain. So that means that 100 seats at $2,000 each is $200,000. That's our contract amount. We've currently used $42,000 worth of seats. So right now, we still have $158,000 worth of usage that we can get out of Virtual Academy. The seats do not expire, and we have them until they're all used. Challenges include low enrollment. The purchase time of the seats was June of 2019, so we've got to do a better job of marketing. Some of the brick and mortar students wish to enroll, and Does it work? Well, students who excel are self-motivated starters. They're focused, they work well on their own, and they most likely participated in a virtual program in the past. Students who are struggling with consistently logging in, being focused, trouble with assignment completion, not enough teacher correspondence, meaning the student is not corresponding with the teacher enough, and they may need tutoring. What are our next steps? Well, we're looking at offering tutoring services. We're having parent meetings in March to address semester 2 challenges, graduation requirements, tutoring services, CTE opportunities. We're administering ASVAB in May, and we know that there's a potential for growth. We obviously have to increase the enrollment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President?
Trustee Miller.
Quick question for Superintendent Miller. Have we seen any test results yet? I mean, I know it's fairly new, so I was wondering how they're comparing to our brick and mortar students.
When you say test results, I assume you mean the state.
Any sort of measurement.
We wouldn't have
those till later in the year.
It's too early, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what I thought, but thank you.
Absolutely.
Trustee Mamala.
Trustee King.
My questions are directed to Mr. Miller. The reason I requested this report was simply because it appears that we have the same virtual academy that has been in the news continually for not delivering a good product. I mean, they have literally read the article. Surely you have, Mr. Miller.
Mm-hmm.
They, built the state for millions of dollars. The students never received a diploma, and I don't know why we're partnering with these kind of folks when in essence, the big argument is these dollars could have been diverted to teachers' salaries. And opposed to doing that, they put them in this kind of nonsense. It's documented. It's been in all of the news, and we're connected with the same company that is really committing fraud. I mean, a student really has to be mindful in order to go through this program. And they're supposed to be providing the monitors and all of that. And what's been stated in the news, they're not doing it. And the GOP continue to fund these people. So I think it's a travesty that we are supporting or we're utilizing a service that is literally destroying public education and destroying our teachers when it comes to teachers' pay.
My feedback on that would be is when we implemented it, none of that information was known about that. We've already purchased it. They're not going to give us a refund. So for the kids who have been successful, which has not been as high as any of us anticipated.
What kids have been successful?
Yes, we have had students who have earned their credits in the program. It's not as high as we would like. But that's one of the reasons we're adding in the tutoring and such. But I don't want the money to be wasted. For certain kids, that is an alternative for them. They're not going to come to Hammond schools otherwise. And I do think that this isn't the last we've heard of this style of learning. Maybe this isn't the right partner for us in the long run, but providing kids options to do things online and face-to-face is going to be the future of education.
I understand that, but we need to deal with reputable people. That's all I'm saying. And these folks, it's documented, it's out there, Mr. Miller, and here we're associating ourselves with these kind of people. And I just don't see that we should be, I don't think we should encourage or utilize this program again. Once this program is, these children have, if they ever get a diploma, I don't think we should ever merge with these folks ever again.
Yes, I don't disagree that we would need to look at the vendor. We don't want to be associated with vendors of ill repute on any level. I will say that this was a vendor that we've had not for this product, but for other products, we've had a relationship for a long time, and it was positive, and we had no concern. Ms. Meyer, how long had we been in relationship with the vendor?
I would say I've been downtown for 13 years, and we've been using this vendor even before I came downtown, so probably at least 15 or 16 years.
I can't hear her.
Do you want to, could you come, I'm sorry. Could you repeat what you were saying, please?
Sorry about that, Superintendent Miller, Mrs. Mamala, and members of the board. We have actually been with this vendor for probably about 16 years, and I know that when I came down as a secondary director, this is the same vendor that we do Play-Doh with. And if you remember, our graduation rates were very low when I came down as a secondary director. We've improved them by about 50%. And it was through the Play-Doh program we started getting credit recovery. So that's Edmentum. We also do Exact Path and Study Island, which are remediation programs with our students through this same company. So they offer a variety of things. When we partnered with them to do virtual learning, we did not realize that there was going to be issues, but I really think the issue is not necessarily with the company, but with the school corporation who is implementing it. And I think it's the school people and those school corporations that monitor it and make sure that the kids are doing the work. That's the important thing with any program that you purchase from a vendor.
But the reports that I'm reading, it's the vendor. It's the vendor, and it's documented. The millions of dollars they have corrupted, period. Tax dollars that could have been, again, diverted to teacher salaries. And why are we associating ourselves with something like that? And I'll stand on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller, the one thing that's not on this report was summer school. I mean,
Yep.
yes or no? Are we having summer school for these kids this summer? Yes or no?
Yes, it is not on the agenda. I had mentioned to you, we have not had our meeting yet. I have the meeting scheduled with administrators for Tuesday to discuss the summer school plan and the state reimbursement for that.
And will it be in next year's budget?
Well, the summer school has a reimbursement grant. It's currently funded at around $18.5 million. Last year, there was reimbursements across the state to the tune of about $21 million. So you get back about 80 to 85 cents on the dollar for that. So that is...
Yes, so that's a yes. Is that a yes?
It is a yes,
Well,
but I do want to explain
the time
it.
is getting past, Mr. Miller. We've been here.
We are within the window to apply.
We still got a ways to go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, public expression first period is related to items that are on the first part of the agenda. So those that have signed up, are those related to the first part of the agenda?
For the whole agenda.
If not, I will move everyone to the second part. To the first part of the agenda?
You should ask each person individually.
Okay, you don't have to speak out and shout out.
Well,
and are we going to give them a chance to sign up if they have it?
All right.
Oh, my God.
All right, Tim Ramian. Mike Holt. Looks like Keith Bognan. Trina Alexander left. Okay, Mr. Buck.
Good evening. My name is Mr. Buck. When they were presenting and they was talking about the help in the schools, I think Maywood needs a in-school suspension classroom with a licensed teacher as well, because we have a lot of students over there with problems. And we could use it at the elementary school as well as the middle school and the high school. We need that same help. You know, you don't let a kid get out of control. See what the sign said, that presentation? To build a strong kid. Don't let him get out of control Then, once he get up here, then you say, okay, well, let's try to fix it. Let's fix it at Maywood, at the elementary levels. That's what we need to, because what they do, they come to the office, they sit down for a few minutes. You can't pack the office with kids, so you send them back to the class. No consequences for their actions, so I can go back and I can do this again. And I'll get another 15-minute break to go sit in the office. And I'll go back to class. So we do, in the elementary schools, we need a in-school suspension room with the licensed teacher. So the kid will understand at an early age there's consequences for your actions. Maywood needs some help. We're a consolidated school. We need some help. Irvin has a principal, 2 assistant principals, and an assistant to the principal.
Amen.
Maywood has a principal and an assistant to the principal. How is that fair? And both of them were consolidated with other schools. Maywood need help too. That's not fair. One of them is not on the books, but that's where they're located. That's not fair for them to have all that administration, and Maywood don't have the administration, and both of them are consolidated schools. And as far as when he said about the teachers, all the subs we have, you won't even match the salary of the districts that's around us. So, I mean, people got to make a living. They going where the money at, and we're going to lose a lot of more good teachers because you won't pay them. You putting money in junk instead of putting that money in these teachers' pockets to keep them here or draw other teachers to come in. Let's do something about this. Let's appreciate our teachers. That's what we need to be doing, paying them a decent salary. That's all they ask for, they'll stay.
Thank you. Cindy Murphy?
Cindy Murphy, 6838 Colorado. You had hours of presentations today, so much to talk about. Starting with special ed, it was refreshing to see one of your departments having mission, vision, and goals. And that goes back to strategic planning again. Do those mission, vision, and goals, are they supported by the current school board? Are they yours? You don't know yet, because you haven't gone through the process. The majority of this board's been here a whole year, and you still haven't done that. I don't know if you have any of those goals for the superintendent. You do know that the legislature requires you to have goals for the superintendent so you can evaluate him once a year. By statute, that's part of your job. And don't get me started on Eggers. Equity. 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 I have been talking about Eggers for 20 years, and we've come back again. So 20 years ago, I was here at school board meetings saying, this school is overcrowded. You got kids having classes in the gymnasium. I got on the board. They were the last school to get algebra. They were the last schools to get Spanish teachers. They're the last schools to get the highly qualified teachers. Now you've got a principal who comes up here and says she's going to make lemonade out of those lemons, but why does she have to? I said for years, in order to bring equity to these children who are the most underserved children in this district, you should be pulling highly qualified teachers from the other middle schools to support that principal and the rest of this staff. Obviously, you can't do it mid-year. But this summer, there needs to be some serious decisions to make sure those children get the equity they deserve that the rest of the district is getting. Hire them in with a bonus. That's what a lot of other districts do. When you have a school that is hard to get those highly qualified teachers, the superintendent already has that. So sometimes it's math teachers or foreign language or band, and you give them extra money. Well, give them extra money to go to Eggers. And so we can get those students what they deserve. And please do something in the interim. This is unacceptable. They want to do PD and there's no subs. It should be coordinated through the district. So this is the days that Eggers needs those subs. Let's get them to them so their teachers and subs can get the PD that they need to help serve those children. I cannot believe 2 decades later I'm saying the same things. I hope this board changes this. Thank you.
Okay, item 4 under unfinished business. Pardon? I have called everyone that has signed up for the first part of public expression. Right? Yeah. Okay.
And Trustee Mamala,
Trustee King.
for consistency, you know, you always ask before the board meeting.
Oh, well, I
So
got
we have to
carried
be
away.
consistent on that, okay? Because people be upset, you know.
Yeah, but if somebody comes in really, really late, we
No,
can't.
but we
have
come out
them-
late.
have
We
them-
come out late.
If somebody, I give a few more minutes and then that's it.
But it's something you started.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, well-
Okay, don't, stay on task. Item 4, unfinished business. Second reading, adoption board policy updates. Trustees, you have received the board policy updates. They are 0100 definitions, 2261 Title I, 2261.01 parent and family member participation in Title I programs, 2281 parent and family engagement, 2623.01 test security provisions for statewide assessments, 5330.02 care for students with diabetes, 5335 care student with chronic health conditions, 5341 emergency medical authorization, 5410 promotion, placement, and retention, 6145 short-term indebtedness, 6220 budget preparation, 6325 procurement / federal grants / funds, 6605 crowdfunding, 7530.01 V1 cell phone allowance, 8121 personal background check contracted services, 8210 school calendar, 8500 food service program, and 8600 transportation. So, at this time, I would like a motion on the policies that have been read.
Trustee Mamala, may I ask a question before you?
Sure.
Could we have Dr. Green to at least expound on the cell phone allowance and Title IX? Title IX is so crucially important, and people need to understand that. So, at least Title IX, or whoever can address it.
Dr. Green, do you mind coming up, please?
I appreciate it.
Good evening, members of the board. Superintendent Miller. I wasn't prepared to discuss the policies tonight, but I'll try and do the best that I can.
I know you will.
Which ones do you have questions
This
on?
Title IX, the engagement of parents, please. Okay.
Title IX is not the engagement.
Which
Title
one
I,
it
I
was?
think it's Title I that she's
I
referring
have,
to.
is it Title, I thought it was Title IX.
Title IX is the sexual
It is
harassment. The parent, if you're referring to the updates.
Parent engagement.
That's Title I, yeah.
Remember, I asked you the question, if we don't engage the parents, what would happen? And you said, don't ask the question. So I think it's important that we.
So basically, the new provisions in Title I just talk about the engagement of parents. It talks about the fact that we will include them in decision-making and meetings, get them involved in the process. But it really is no different than what Title I has been from the beginning.
Well, why do we have the update? I mean, there's changes in it. Unless I missed something.
They defined it out. It was broadly, it's much more specifically defined of how we have to engage parents. It's under the 2261.01.
Is that 3?
Yeah, it's your third update.
Well, if not now, Mr. Miller, perhaps at some point. I just thought it was important that, before we pass these policies, that the public.
No, I don't mind actually going through it. Basically, what it's talking about is the fact that we need to invite our parents for training, invite our parents to be a part of decision-making, actually have policy that outlines how we're going to include the parents in the whole policy. So essentially, it's nothing different than what we did before. The only update that they did was actually outlining that as to what it looks like. So basically, if you are going to have a pizza party at one of the schools, having the parents be a part of that planning process. If you are going to make a decision about what colors we're going to pick for our new school, that would be a part of having the parents as a part of that. And it also further defined not only having parents involved, but also family members, because all of our students are not from just a traditional family. So maybe having those exceptional families also be involved, like when a grandparent is raising a child. So that's what it's doing, is it's just outlining that language and making it very clear.
And then the cell phone policy,
The cell phone policy was not for students, as I said in the update. The cell phone policy was for employees, to make sure that we had a plan and a policy that outlined how employees would pay back if they were using the cell phone for personal reasons. So it's more than just a business phone, then they actually have to pay a portion of that back to the school city. And so that policy outlines that.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
And at some point, we did have some discussion that we had to address the cell phones with the students.
Correct.
And you want to expound on that, Mr. Miller?
Yes, I've met with the teachers share that same concern with the cell phone policy. We had some discussion and came up with a proposal on how to handle it. Essentially, the proposal that we will present formally to you will be that there will be secured storage in the main office where a student who is using the cell phone in violation of the policy can take it down there. It gets locked up by one of our office people, and they can they're given a number, or we hold their ID. That part we need to figure out a little bit better, but essentially at the end of the day, then they can come back and retrieve the phone from the secured locker. This way, they're not losing class time. That's my biggest concerns. I don't want them out for the entire period for a first offense. But it is progressive discipline, so if it continues to be an issue, we will be tracking it when they are brought to the office. It is also protects the teachers that way too. We've had some issues in the past where if a phone was taken by a teacher and a student stole it off the desk, or it fell off the desk and got damaged, those are liabilities for the teachers. We don't want to put them in that position, but we recognize the need for them to have control over their learning environment and not be constantly disrupted by cell phones.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, there has been a motion. Is there a second?
I don't think
we didn't get a motion.
We don't have.
We didn't do a motion. Madam President, I make a motion that we accept the, boy, where are we? My eyes are playing. Excuse me.
4A. Unfinished business, 4A.
Oh, the second reading adoption of the board policy updates. I so move.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion? There is none. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The adoption policies have been approved. Okay, item 5.
Trustees, I am recommending the approval of item 5, the consent agenda, items A through C, including the personnel report with addendum.
Okay, trustees, in your board docs, you have received items in concerning the consent agenda, A through C. Can I have a motion?
Madam President,
Trustee Miller.
I make a motion for the approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Discussion.
Discussion, Trustee King.
My computer went dead. I just want to read into record the dollar amounts. Do you have it, Mr. Moon?
Yeah, I can get it.
Payroll or accounts payable?
It keeps saying reload. Oh, Father.
1 second.
Okay. Don't you have it? Did you print it out? Okay. Does anyone else have it? They can read it into record. Trustee Candelier, do you have it?
I'm getting failed to load PDF right now.
I tell you, it won't come up.
Payroll voucher.
Are you asking for the payroll voucher, item B?
Yes, I want to read okay.
It's under item A, the accounts payable docket register that lists all the
Okay,
expenses.
the person, this is payroll. Payroll amount, went out again. Oh, there it is. $2,198,334.18. And then our payables is the other thing.
That I don't have.
Okay, we're going to knock that
I
out.
don't think that's out there.
And here we go. That's the register. Oh, it won't go
That's
out.
what I'm getting to.
It won't
I'm getting
reload.
that same thing.
Oh, well. Public never know. I have no idea. But other than that, under, I'll let the records reflect that the equipment was down and we couldn't read that into the record. But you certainly have it. Maybe you can just write it into record, Anna, for us. I appreciate it. Thank you. And under the payables, Mr. Miller, once again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. At some point, I'm requesting, and I hope the board supports me in this, that the fact that we're going to have to meet with DUAB again in November, correct? And one of their requests, according to Mr. Reese, he shared that with me. We had 1 year to get our act in order. And one of the things they said to us is we had to start renegotiating contracts, vendors, and consultants. And if they don't see us working towards that, Mr. Miller, we could be in jeopardy again. And, and so at some point, we're going to have to start doing this. They asked that question twice.
I believe we are doing it. Every contract, we don't sign 5-year, 10-year contracts. We typically sign year-to-year or 2-year contracts, and every time they come up, we go through the entire process
But we don't see it.
to solicit bids. But when we do upload the supporting documentation, when we do these things, like for example, it didn't get submitted to me till Monday, so I didn't put it on this agenda, but at the next board meeting, we'll have a proposal for you to approve repairs to the gas tanks or replacements for the tanks at transportation. And we solicited 5 different quotes. All of that documentation will be there. So the department heads are doing this for all of their major contracts. You remember 2 or 3 meetings ago, we were able to renegotiate the internet service provider cost and get a cost that better served that we had the same performance, we had redundancy, and we cut the cost $1,500 a month. So the directors have that message loud and clear that we have to do it.
I don't see it in the board docs, and unless you tell us, we would know. So again, when we have to go back down there, or if we have to go back to Indianapolis, I want us to be prepared.
Okay.
As simple as that. And those kind of reports, I think, should be made, so I won't have to continue to ask the same question. Understood?
I do understand. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Madam President, go ahead.
Yes, Trustee King.
I think we're ready for the vote.
All right. There has been a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The consent agenda has been approved. Item 6, new business.
Trustees, I'm recommending the approval of item A, the listing of donations as presented in board docs.
Is there a motion for item A?
Madam President,
Trustee Zuno.
I make a motion to approve the donations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? There is none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item A, board approval of donations has been approved. Item B.
Trustees, I am recommending the approval of the extracurricular purchases as outlined in board docs.
Madam President,
Trustee Miller.
I make a motion for the approval of the extracurricular purchases as presented.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion? There is none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item B, board approval of extracurricular purchases has been approved. Item C.
Trustees, I am recommending the approval of item C, a contract between Clark Middle High School and DJ Speaks for their junior-senior prom. The funding source is the class of 2021.
Is there a motion?
Madam President,
Trustee Miller.
I move for the approval of the contract between Clark and DJ Speaks as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion? There is none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The approval of contract between Clark and DJ Speaks has been approved. Item D.
Trustees, I am recommending the approval of the Project Lead the Way grant for Wallace Elementary. You approved 9 of them. This is number 10. I do anticipate the last 2 will be on the 17th meeting, but this is in line with the other elementaries for bringing Project Lead the Way pre-engineering down into the elementary schools.
Is there a motion?
Madam President, I make a motion that we approve the approval of the PLTW grant for Wallace Elementary School.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? There is none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The approval of the Project Lead TW grant of Wallace Elementary School has been approved. Item 7, upcoming board meetings. Okay, trustees, what I would like to do for the March 17th meeting, because it is scheduled here, we have been having our board meetings here at 41 Williams since the beginning of school. And with the consolidation of the high schools, we have not went out to those school corporations to reach out to those communities. So for the March 17th meeting, I would like for us to go up to Clark High School and have that meeting there. Then for April and May, I would like for us to travel to the other 2 high schools, either Gavitt or Morton and Gavitt, because we have to go out and reach out to those communities, meet with those people in those communities, those folks in those communities that we are consolidating high schools with, so they can have questions, answer questions, and I think that's what we need to do.
What about Hammond High?
Well, Hammond High is not consolidating.
But it's gone.
But
It will be gone.
but we are in the Hammond High 3rd District. So my thing is, we have not went out to the 1st District. Those community members have not came here and have not had an opportunity. Individuals from Gavitt and Morton have not had the opportunity to attend meetings because we're closing Gavitt, we're consolidating Gavitt with Morton, we're closing Clark. All the students from Hammond High are moving from an old high school to a new school. And we are in the 3rd District, and those community members have been at these board meetings. So, trustees, I'm asking that for us to schedule the March 17th meeting at Clark High School. Trustee Miller?
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Candelaria?
Yes.
Trustee Zulno?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you got your votes. I'm just not open. If you can't go to all of the schools. I mean, this notion that Clark and Gavitt and Morton, I guess, has been harmed, it's though Hammond High never existed. We're not doing any
But we are in the
consideration.
third
But it
district.
doesn't matter.
And
If
those
you're gonna
community
make-
members
I'm
have
speaking.
had,
I am
okay,
speak-
go ahead, I'm sorry.
You know, there is a Robert's Rule of Order that states that when someone starts discussion or debate, they have up to 10 minutes to speak, and we need to follow that. Every time I try to make a point, I'm attacked continually, and I'm just tired. I know we're all tired, but please stop interrupting me per Robert's Rules of Order. Period. As I was saying, if we're going to extend that kind of olive leaf to the other 3 high schools, we need to extend it to Hammond High as well. And I'll stand on that. And I won't support anything unless Hammond High is included as well. It appears that, you know, the folks in the Maywood community and the folks, you want to call it Maywood, East Hammond, or Central Hammond, whatever meets your need, they have been harmed as well. But we want to just dismiss it. And you heard them loud and clear at the last school board meeting, and nobody wants to address it. It's like it was a vapor in here, whispers. You had some hardcore concerns from the Maywood East Hammond community, and nobody wants to address it. Then you want to pour salt on the wound and eliminate Hammond High as a meeting place? That makes no sense to me.
Madam President, I had a question.
Trustee Candelaria.
So last year, when was officially my first year on the board, and I do recall going to different schools for board meetings. Do you recall which schools did we attend?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's see, we went to Maywood last year.
We had one at Maywood, we had one at Lincoln.
Mm-hmm. Most of the
weren't
elementaries
in
and the,
Hammond High.
I'm speaking, most of the elementaries and the high schools.
I believe we went to Clark,
Mm-hmm. We
Scott.
always went up to one or two
Scott.
high schools.
Scott Middle
We
School.
were at Scott.
Scott Middle School. We went to Eggers. Actually, we went to, but I feel it's just very crucial that the schools that we are closing and giving those members of those communities an opportunity to attend those meetings. I'm not dissing any school or throwing away any school or ignoring any school. Now, if a school needs to be addressed, then that's up to the administration to address those issues, not point fingers at the board. We don't work down here. But we're easy to point fingers at. Now, if you have an issue with any of the schools, because there's more than 2 schools in Hammond, there's more than Hammond High and Maywood. We have other schools. But if the issues want to be addressed on Maywood, then the administration has to address those issues. So now, I'm just suggesting for the March 17th meeting to be at Clark. And that's okay with most of the board members? Okay, now, what I have to ask Trustee Miller, Superintendent Miller, are you still planning on having an executive session? Because I'm concerned about Trustee Miller coming from work.
Yes, that would be the intention.
Okay, Trustee Miller, how is your traveling and how is your time?
I will do my best to be on time. I was stopped today by a student on my way out, and
Sure,
that's
sure,
what delayed
okay.
me, so.
All right. So, March 17th, we're going to have the school board meeting up at Clark. Any past concerns that community has asked, maybe we could address. If Mr. Potes has any new information on transportation for us to address. Okay. Because it's in all fairness that we do this. All right. Public expression second period. Nancy White.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Nancy White, 1048 Morris Street. I'm here to speak on some comments that were made about Trustee King last week. It really hurt my feelings. I know maybe they hurt hers, but they hurt mine. Someone said that she demanded that the school be named after Dr. Watkins. She did not, and I reviewed the video again just to make sure I heard what I heard, and she just said that she wanted an up or down vote. When you demand something, you don't give anybody a choice. You just say, this is what you have to do. She didn't say that. So whoever said that, that was pretty vicious. And people do have a tendency, in my opinion, to attack her. She's boisterous, but you have to understand when she states a lot of things, it's true. When it came to my department, it was bad. You have no idea. But you guys know we came here several times from transportation. It has gotten so much better. But we wouldn't have been able to make that progress without her because she would not stop. We did ask her to help us. And I'm telling you, our department has changed. And one thing you did say, President Mamala, you did say that you gave us a good...
I can't hear you.
You did say that you did give us a good director, and we do appreciate that.
Yes.
But I am saying when Trustee King says something, I think people need to pay attention. You think about the custodians that were laid off. You think about this coronavirus that's going around now. Maybe we wouldn't have been able to even put them in place if something should happen in Hammond. So there's several things that she's done. Hammond High, band, choir, they didn't have it. I've known her for years, and before she even thought about getting on the school board, she's helped numerous people through the years just out of the goodness of her heart. And she's just passionate about the things that she's doing for other people and these children, and she loves these children. And I just don't like people attacking her. She's done so many things for Hammond, for these children, and I think they just need to kind of lay off and understand that she's trying to make sure these kids get a good education. We have a big, beautiful school. I mean, the Hammond High is just, I drive past it just to look at it. But we want to make sure that the children that come out can hold their head high so they can learn. We don't want to have a big, beautiful school and not turning out good, productive citizens. We don't want that. Now, we have to get it together and just stop, attacking. Listen sometimes. You might be surprised at how you can move forward if, you just listen. She didn't say that. And that was just mean. It was very mean-spirited. And that's all I have to say.
Laura Ebner? Laura Ebner. Okay, thank you. Elsa Regalado, she's gone. Mr. Buck.
Hello again. I've been coming to these meetings, and I haven't been liking what I've been seeing with your attorney bullying people. So I went to the federal court today to get these papers so I can file a lawsuit against the school city of Hammond. When you bully people and you come up here and you tell them what they cannot say, that is called censorship. I have the same right to speak and say what I want to say in a public setting as Donald Trump has with all the stupid, idiotic stuff he says. Whether you like it or not, he has a right to say it. I have a right to speak my mind, and it doesn't matter who doesn't like it. If I stand here and curse, the First Amendment says I have a right to, and I did not violate anyone, but I wouldn't do it. You say you can't use someone's name. That's not what the Constitution says. I can use someone's name. And just to make things clear, when I booed last week, I didn't boo the man because I don't know the man. I booed the process. So don't paint me, Ann, talking about he's booing. I booed the process. I didn't boo the man. I don't know the man. And for you to say those people in the other districts don't have they can't get here. Oh, it was full of Clark people up in here. They have automobiles. It was full of Morton people, Gavitt people. So don't say that they can't get here because it's in the 3rd district. Hammond High should be included in that meeting also. But see, everything we want in our district is pushed to the back burner. You specifically said Maywood and Eggers, if you have concerns about that, take it to the administration. You're making the decisions for that administration. True. We're supposed to bring it here. The janitors, you all breached their contract. They ought to go on strike. You had one janitor at Eggers last week. One to clean the whole building. So we know that didn't get cleaned. We had 2 at Maywood Friday. We know that didn't get cleaned. They are instructed to make sure you dump the garbage. You breached their contract. I don't care what you say about we're trying to save money. That contract says you're supposed to have these many people there. They need to go on strike, and you cannot tell them they can't strike if you breach their contract first. They did not breach the contract. You did. So quit putting our schools on the back burner. We have a right. We pay taxes just like everybody else. All we're asking for is a fair shake in our districts. That's it. Like I said, Irvin has all that support in the administration. Maywood don't. Why do we have to beg for what we want when it's given to other schools? We just want what we need for our children. But you say, I care about all the children, except in the 3rd district.
Thank you. Greg Erminger. You're done? Okay. Anita Cox is left. Callie from Bridges? No? Cindy Murphy?
Keep going after you, Mr. Buck. Now move that microphone. Cindy Murphy, 6838 Colorado. I had some questions. I have to consolidate this because this is actually what I was going to say in the first period. So we had the new high school presentation here today. We talked about unisex bathrooms back in 2017. If we're going to be doing that, the public should probably know about that so that can get that discussion going out there. We saw about on the top floor of the gymnasium that want to make sure Title IX, having daughters that went over to Morton and having unequal facilities to work out on, make sure that that's unisex up there, that we have equal opportunity for our ladies. And then, where's the survey? A lot of people have asked about that.
I'll address that in my report.
Thank you. How are we doing on the tracks? People want to know where the boundaries are going to be. And then going back to the Clark presentation, the school was originally built for 1,800 students. I understand we can go to 21. But unfortunately, that's going to make some really big classroom sizes. So how many students are you going to be putting in there? Now, for what I was really going to talk. So before I came over here, I watched Buddy Berry, and that's one of the people you approved for this summit. Buddy Berry is great. He was a science teacher, district that was in a hard time getting a superintendent, and they said to him, how would you like to be our superintendent? So he brings things about delight and surprise, and that's what our new high school should be about. And I was talking to another school board member about what was the cool things we did in science class. The sludge test in 8th grade. We had access to alcohol burners. We had access to gas. None of my kids who went to Morton had access to any of that, or at Scott Middle School. This is supposed to be some place where kids can walk in the door and say, this is cool. You haven't given them a dream. This is something we should be selling them on how this is a great place to be going. I made esters. Do you know what an ester is in organic chemistry? Those are smells. Can you imagine going into chemistry class and boiling that up, and all of a sudden you've got tutti frutti? And so bringing kids in for these wonderful things, curriculum, the name, the mascot, the track, the full-size stadium, all of these are important things, but the most important thing in this new high school is what is inside of it. What is going to make those kids walk in the door and I'm like, oh my God, this is cool. I want to be here. You need to be selling this school. What is the curriculum? This is the most exciting thing to happen to Hammond, but no one's talking about the curriculum.
Time is up.
Oh, thank you, President Mamala.
All right. Reports from the superintendent.
In regards to the branding update, I do anticipate that by week's end, we will publish the link on every way we can. Social media, our website, everything. It will be out there. We will be sending it to the 60 or so people who came in to hear the presentation. They were selected because they have their own spheres of influence and to be able to get it out to the people that they represent. But we're looking at keeping it open for 2 full weeks to try to get as many responses as possible. In regards to someone, I believe it was Mr. Buck, mentioned the coronavirus. There has been some guidance that's come down from the CDC. The Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents has also released a template memo. But it's all the things that we would ask people to do just for the flu, such as wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If that's not available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. If possible, cough or sneeze into a disposable tissue and discard. Use your sleeve or clothing only as a last resort. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Stay home when you are sick. Remain at home until fever is less than 100 degrees for at least 24 hours without the use of fever-reducing medications. Seek immediate medical care if symptoms become more severe, high fever or difficulty breathing. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces was the recommendations that have come out. Now, I certainly don't want to presuppose anything, but we do have e-learning, and I will compose a memo that will go out to all the parents, but if we actually get confirmed cases, it becomes a very difficult situation because employees, rightly so, don't want to go into work if we have positive cases of coronavirus. And right now, the recommendation is 3 full weeks out. So we would be looking to e-learning days. It's consistent with what other districts that have e-learning as an option are going to be doing if they get positive results on the coronavirus. That would be the plan. It's not ideal. I hope it doesn't come here, but that's, and we're going to do everything we can to keep our buildings clean. We do have protocols for deep cleaning that we do use when attendance drops, or we have something like if there was a positive result. We don't use those chemicals every day because they are somewhat caustic and they can cause breathing issues for students with asthma. So it is not something we use just as everyday cleaning, but we do have a ability to clean our buildings to the point that would eradicate the virus if we did get a positive hit. But all of us are talking about it. It is not something that we will be unprepared for. That's through operations, through technology, through everyone. And again, I hope it doesn't come to Hammond, but if it does, we will treat it as seriously as the situation calls for. And some questions in the executive session. I was just asked to talk about the Morton branding. The very first question on the survey will be if someone is filling it out for the new school or for Morton. And the second question will be to identify what your role is: student, parent, community member, employee. So we will be able to have that. That was the number one feedback that I got from people, was they wanted to make sure that we were identifying who was filling out the survey. We do anticipate providing time for students at the middle and high schools to all fill out the survey on school time. I think it's that important that we take 10 minutes. It won't take more than 10 minutes, but to make sure all students have an opportunity while at school to complete the survey. There were some comments brought up at the last meeting, like, do we have money to rebrand Morton? We have options. I will say that at this point, that I want to hear what the public has to say. That's where my seat is. I want to hear what the public has to say. If the overwhelming amount of the public who fill it out for Morton say, leave it as Morton Governors, I am absolutely fine with that, if that's what the overwhelming public says. If it's not that, though, if it's far less than that, then we need to know that. We need to at least ask the question. But same thing with Hammond High, for that matter. If the overwhelming responses from the survey for Hammond High says leave it as Hammond High, I am perfectly okay with that. But I do think we have to ask the question, and then that's what the survey will provide, is the responses from the community. That concludes my reports.
Okay, thank you. Any other reports from board members?
Trustee Mamala.
Trustee King.
Mr. Miller, I raised a question regarding what is your response to the East Hammond community that spoke at the last school board meeting. You have addressed Clark, Gavitt, and their issues and concerns, but there was a lot of conversation that came to that microphone regarding the feelings and the ideas from the Maywood East Hammond community. And I think you need to address that community.
I will just say this, that I am hired to make the best decisions I am capable of making. And they won't always be popular with every community, especially in a community as diverse as Hammond. I do feel that the process was valid. I do feel that the recommendations were my best recommendations. I'm not going to say anything more about any individuals, because I like all the individuals. I truly care for every individual who was involved in this situation. But that is my responsibility, is to make the recommendations that I think will best serve the kids in the community of Hammond, and I do feel that's what I did.
Trustee Mamala.
Trustee King.
Cindy Murphy brought something to my remembrance.
Pardon? I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry. Cindy Murphy, in one of her comments, she indicated that we had to evaluate Mr. Miller. So we need to put that on our radar. I think it has to do about June. Isn't June when you were hired, June 1st, June?
It actually was in April, the second April meeting.
So we have to, according to the terms of Mr. Miller's temporary superintendent's license and contract, we need to set a date to evaluate him.
Are there any other reports from board members? Trustee Zulno?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know you were finished. You didn't say.
I said we need to set a date.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
Trustee Mamala. Again, based on the terms of Mr. Miller's temporary superintendent's license and contract, we need to set a date to evaluate him?
The statute, you follow the statute on that. You don't just decide those sitting at a board meeting.
Right.
And I would suggest that Superintendent Miller, it would be best for you to follow up with the Indiana School Board Association and/or the Superintendent Association, because that evaluation it's required to follow the requirements of state law, which include being objective, measurable, and they have an instrument and tool that you would use. And that evaluation is just like we do with all other certified employees. That doesn't get finished until about November-ish. And it's the same cycle with everybody else. So you're probably out of cycle on that, but it doesn't hurt to go ahead and contact your associations for the instrument that they have already done that meets with state law.
Well, Attorney Conrad, we expected you to share that with us in advance, the information that you're sharing now. April is right around the corner. If we don't evaluate him, from my understanding, he gets a pass.
That's not necessarily how the process
Well,
works.
not necessarily, you know.
No, so that's
you never
what
make anything.
But
I'm
it's
speaking.
never been
I
until
am
this
speaking,
moment. It
Attorney
was not
Conrad.
ever. It was
I'm
not ever
speaking.
raised, and so this is the first opportunity that this has been raised. So since it's been raised, the next step that you would do, and you, Superintendent Miller, were kind of hired, and you didn't actually start until Dr. Watkins had completed, which I believe was around July 1. So your official begin date was, I think, there was some transition time in some of that too. So I think all of that has to be kind of taken into consideration as to how that works. But,
yes.
But how, superintendent's contracts are usually going from July 1 to July 1 with a process that kind of
Right.
happens at the backside of that, in the same kind of synchronized pattern that we do with our certified staff and your principals.
Okay. Trustee Zuno?
Well, after hearing all this, I don't know how I'm going to accomplish it, but I know I'm new to the board, and it's been a short time, but I'm very disappointed in how it is functioning. We have very serious issues to confront. I feel we spend more time arguing about what's on the agenda than dealing with the items that are on it. It's time to put away our differences and do the job we were put here to do. We can't be attacking the superintendent on every issue. We have to move on. And these issues we're going over now, which are big issues, are going to get even worse. So we need to move on. I'll try my best, but it's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Zuno. Any other reports from board members?
I'm going to reserve my activities for next week.
Pardon?
I say I'll reserve my activities until the next school board meeting. I attended at least 10 Black History Quote program. We went to the Head Start program, went to Black and White Ball. We
yes,
did a
Head
lot.
Start, yeah.
So I'll just defer it until our next meeting.
Okay. All right. There's not any further reports. I will call for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.